right? But like there are innate biological differences.
Yes.
Now, how we deal with those differences and how we value those differences, right, is going to be socially constructed.
The concept of masculinity is kind of silly, since we let people place their entire value on whether or not they're a real man, and then shame them if they miss one of those various fluctuating definitions. So, being a man is arbitrary. It's a standard that varies widely across the world, in cultures, in families, and it's ultimately just used as a tool to promote good behavior. Because people say, real men don't hit women, real men don't vote Democrat. Well, real men do those things all the time. I do at least one of those things.
Curious, Tuna, do we think there's evidence of that with women in STEM? My understanding is that their test scores in a lot of STEM subjects are like better than men. They seem to be doing better than men.
I'm not talking about performance. I'm not saying that women are worse. I'm saying
desire. Like
desire.
The biggest gender difference between men and women is that women prefer to deal with people more than to deal with things.
If you want to see more content like this, I would really appreciate you liking and subscribing. It really helps with the algorithm. And make sure to check out the Discord and other social links in the description.
Okay. I think I clicked all the buttons correctly. Welcome one and all to yet another episode of Wick TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. Gang, have we got a show for you tonight? Tonight we're going to be talking about manhood. What does it mean to be a man? And rather than go on and on about theories and things like that, I'm just going to ask these individuals, and that's how we're going to start. SoyPill, what does it mean to be a man to you? When someone says
to me,
there is a good man, what does that mean?
To me is a little different, because I think I'm going to be talking about it in context of society. Because for a while, being a man meant a very rigid, kind of strict set of things: being confident, being independent, being protective, being strong, being a breadwinner, being emotionless and stoic. I think this has caused stagnation in terms of emotional development, but it's also promoted a lot of good behavior, altruism, hard work ethic. It's a very mixed bag. Some of it's based in biology. Men are on average stronger, meaning that they could be protectors, meaning they would make more decisions, meaning they held more jobs, meaning they were the providers. But ultimately, I think masculinity and the concept of masculinity is kind of silly, since we let people place their entire value on whether or not they're a real man, and then shame them if they miss one of those various fluctuating definitions. So being a man is arbitrary. It's a standard that varies widely across the world, in cultures, in families, and it's ultimately just used as a tool to promote good behavior. Because people say, real men don't hit women, real men don't vote Democrat. Well, real men do those things all the time. I do at least one of those things. So what does it mean to be a real man? Am I a real man because I work out? Am I a real man because I wear sunglasses inside with my shades drawn? I think we need to do away with any strict definition that at best gives someone or something for boys to strive to, and at worst promotes toxic behavior, makes men feel worthless for not meeting that definition, and etc. I think any definition that anyone else on this panel is going to give today is going to be applicable to men, women, whoever, and it doesn't have to be tied to gender. So what does it mean to be a man? Whatever the hell I want it to be. I think that everything good that I like is what it means to be a man.
Okay. Fabian Liberty, same question. When someone asks you, what's a man? What does being a man mean to you? How would you answer?
Yeah, so I think, piggybacking a little bit off of SoyPill's intro here, right? The definition that I tend to use is, the socially constructed gender role that is inherent and or explains the adult human male. And so, there is an interplay both between the biology that informs it, the gender role, as well as, the social situation, the economic situation, the material conditions, the culture that you're in, et cetera. We can see that, what a man is, it's not so much to say it is arbitrary, but I think arbitrary is a word we use inappropriately. It is made by society to fit what the time is. So the real question really comes down to, it splits into two domains, right? One is, what does society expect of you as a man? And then the other is kind of like, what ought you do as an individual man? And what you ought to do as an individual man is what is within your own rational self-interest. And that is going to be different for each individual. But again, if society has certain expectations, you have to understand that you are going to have a kind of a net negative cost to your behavior if your behavior goes out of those guardrails for, what it is that other people have. And so you have to make sure that there's a reason that you're doing that. I think when we have a society that has pushed back against Christianity, pushed back against many of our kind of cultural guardrails as we've adopted egalitarianism. And I'm not saying that that is good or bad, just descriptively is. And I think Nietzsche kind of saw this coming, before most of us did, and Thus Spake Zarathustra, when talking about the three metamorphoses. We have to be careful that we don't become stuck in the lion that kills the dragon of thou shalt, but that we are like the children that are kind of able to create our own moral frameworks and create our own goals, etc. And so I think we are in a crisis here. And the crisis is that we as a culture have lost all of those guardrails that help us define these gender roles and help young men kind of know what it is that they're supposed to do. Right? There's good and bad with those guardrails. The bad being obviously that it restricts behavior and, limits freedom and, has limited our potential and growth and progress in a lot of ways. But also, what ought a 17-year-old man do when he has all of these options, and so many of them are mired with chaos in a culture that keeps hating men more and more, in a culture that increasingly doesn't have male father figures, in a culture that doesn't have an answer to that question. And it presents a significant and unique challenge to young men today.
Okay. Nonfon. And maybe I should have said this at first. Again, this is just opening salvo, gang. I want to get to the greater discussion as we go, right? So brevity is the soul of wit. Okay, Nonfon, what do you got? What does being a man mean to you?
As I believe the most modern man here, I'm still trying to figure it out. But I would kind of agree with Soy that, we don't really ought to have, some rigid standard of what it is to be a real man. I think being a good man really just means being a good person, being a net value add to society. And I think men are more likely to be in certain positions and therefore have, certain obligations with those positions. Obviously, men are more likely to be asking women out on dates. So maybe there's some obligations that we have with regards to, making sure women remain comfortable when we're flirting with them or whatever. But I don't believe I don't think it's beneficial to have an arbitrary standard of what constitutes a real man.
Interesting. Okay, well, I got a lot of thoughts too, but we'll get to them as we go. ToonKritic.
Hey,
Being a man, what is it?
Yeah. Currently, the simplest way I can put it, although I think there's like a summarizable and like directive, but going purely descriptively, there are multiple definitions of what a man are. There's very little that's like core, and I think everybody senses that. They're saying, oh, I don't want it to be based in a core, but I think it's an ever-updating alternative defined in distinction to other things. It's the fallback for when other things fail. It's the thing that creates the future, but it's like mostly just like a being of immense potential and a gender that has historically defined itself by being at the forefront of actualizing that potential due to our unique opportunity to do that. So it's like a sex that and a gender and also like a principle that defines us as like different than animals, different than nature. It's a little bit complex, but we can move on from that.
Okay, Xerxes, what's a man?
I think there's probably two ways to address the question. There's what it means to be a man personally, and then there's the way the word is used. So let's address what you asked. Like, how do I
What's it mean
define
to you to be a man? Yeah.
So to me, I would say being a man all comes down to being virtuous. The original word for man that we use as a title now was vir, the Latin word. Vir, which can be translated into hero, into man, into masculine, was the root. The root of the word of virtue all comes down to being a man, right? So the word virtue in and of itself is calling to the nature or the values that a man should extol if he's given that title. So to me, being a man is about maintaining virtue, a high, strong moral character, and kind of just being that beacon in the darkness that people can look up to and follow, essentially, to me. So,
Guys, you guys all have these intellectual answers, right? Look, it's simple. A man is
Adult male human. Who's
Hold
gonna do it?
Hold on. No, a man is a person, right? A real man. You know, they stay, make sure that their family gets safe from the fire. They try their best to put the fire out and retreat when they're needed, right? When they can. What a man does is
It's
he
a little
stands
soon
up
for
for
that
what
one,
is
Wick,
right.
don't you think?
What a man does, okay? A man is willing to sacrifice to protect and to save those things that rely upon him. It's something that I know we can intellectualize our way out of it and all we want, but the world is a better place when men act in that way, as someone who is willing and able to protect those he loves and sacrifice when necessary. And it's really that simple. What do we think? Go ahead.
yeah, well, that kind of sounds like a more complex version of what I said. You described a hero, and again, the word ver, in Latin can also be translated into hero. So, I completely agree.
I just
don't,
I don't
Yeah, both of you just gave
I don't want to be a
definitions
dick,
Oh, go
but
ahead.
like ver and vif are like Old English, Proto-European.
Yeah, Latin.
It doesn't come from Latin. Like the
Skip
word
the
man is
definition
Old
of
English,
Yeah.
and like werewolf and like withman,
Well,
right?
originally
Like
it would
that's
be
Old English.
vermen. So yeah, but so
But
so
no,
even
it
like
doesn't
where
come.
and
The
ver.
etymology of the word doesn't come from Latin. It comes from Old English.
So I'll
before the
grant it
Norman
to you.
invasion.
What difference does it make?
Well, it just doesn't have that context. I mean, it doesn't
that's fine. I
matter.
mean,
but
but
Nah, you
your
made a
argument
mistake. You
is-
lose. You lose the debate right now. It's over.
I
No,
lose.
okay.
Look, I'm not trying to be a dick.
I think
Let's give it to SoyPill.
I'll give you the ghost. Yeah.
Wick and Xerxes just had two definitions that are kind of tautological, circular. Hey, being a man is doing whatever I think is good, and that's kind of what I was stating at the beginning.
Well,
It's
that was
really
the question. That's not fair. He did ask us what it meant to us personally. That was
yeah,
the question.
and your definition is it's whatever I think is virtuous, whatever I think is good, which is fine. That's kind of what I was saying at the beginning. It's whatever we define it to be. It's also I just noticed, but both of you said was completely not exclusive to gender. You could say the exact same thing about women. It's just kind of arbitrary, and that's kind of the whole point I'm trying to make.
Let me counter that. This is actually pretty interesting because I actually agree with you. The question then becomes, why don't we say that to women?
We should,
Why don't we
and
say
we
what to
absolutely
women?
should.
I would entail the same
agree, but the
obligations
question
to
is,
women.
why don't we? Right?
How
So-
about we
Why don't we
focus
say what?
on men?
What are you
Again,
referencing?
I think men and women can share values. They can share virtues. There can be shared things that make both of them great that they both should strive to. But let's talk about men for today, okay? Let's at least for a little while in this debate focus on.
I got an answer
men.
for SoyPill.
Go ahead, please.
We're two different like socio-political groups. We're treated differently. We have a different status. We're seen differently. We're categorized by other people differently. So we have to navigate that difference. Even if we both should aspire to the same thing, even if the virtues and the methodologies towards actualization are the same, the path there, the language about it, the way that we think of ourselves is still like historically situated. You're not going to be able to just say, well, a man and a woman should be the same. You kind of have to like meet the moment where it is, and then
Yeah, but how does that difference actually manifest? If you say, hey, men and women need to both be virtuous, they both need to be breadwinners, yeah, you might say, oh, women have to overcome hurdles of sexism. They might have to work a little harder if they want to go into a STEM field. But ultimately, does that change at all what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman? We can talk about, hey, femininity might have to be...
I'm telling you that it is, and I think that you will agree with this, but they are kind of stuck on maybe thinking that in order for somebody to I think you're stuck that like there are two things being talked at once, and you think that we can, if we agree with or we disagree on one and we agree on the other, that's a problem. I would say that an identity which is rooted in gender or sex is a failure to actualize your potential as a person. and that goes for men and women, all the same, it is a component. To define it on that alone is pathetic. Nobody should be thinking of themselves
anybody
as
doing that?
merely a male, when I am defined by my distinction to females. Or similarly, you do the same thing with like the gender. That's like.
But is anybody even doing that?
That's
What
what I'm
does that
saying.
have to do with
Nobody's
it?
doing that. So like to
Right.
like.
Well, so like, I seem to be the only one that has even a drop of conservatism in regards to this topic. Which is, it is what it is. It's fine. Like I'll hold that mantle. Right. But like there are innate biological differences.
Yes.
Now, how we deal with those differences and how we value those differences, right, is going to be socially constructed. Right. But if there are inherent biological differences, that is going to inform the way that we engage with how it is that we put forward gender roles. Right. I mean, the classic example specifically, I know this is about men, right? But the classic example here being of, well, actually, let's bring it to men, right? So one of the important roles of men that is going to be rooted in biological differences is rough and tumble play, right? Rough and tumble play with young children is something that obviously women can do, right? But it is something that isn't so much put onto us by society and gender, but is instead something that is innate to the male species, or to the male of the species. You can go across any culture and you are going to find drastic differences in the utilization of rough and tumble play with young children, which we know is very, very important for the development of children, right? And so this is a behavior that we would ascribe to men. And so the societal context of that is going to change, right? Like in one society, we might consider certain level of rough and tumble play too rough, too mean, we might even consider it abusive. And under another domain or another group, it might go the other way around. And so like we can't have a conversation about what a man ought be or what a man should be in society or what a man ought do unless we can at the very least recognize that the way that we construct these things has some element of biological differences, and that changes what it is that we value and what it is that we expect from those people. And if we go too far into gender abolition, to pure egalitarianism, we get into this kind of issue where we can't act. We're paralyzed.
Let's just ask. Is anyone here a gender abolitionist? I don't know that they are.
No, I don't think so.
I think they are.
Maybe
I'm not
like
accusing
all
anyone of
but the
being
actual
that.
label, but in terms of like how we treat each other. But I guess my question then for oh my god, I forgot your name. Sorry, Fabian.
Yeah.
What intrinsic sexist or sex related characteristic is tied to a virtue that we are telling men to be? What is that intrinsically? Because I agree there are things that are tied to sex, but which of these virtues, which of these things that are exclusive to men, the sex man, are we striving towards? Because I can't think of one off the top of my head.
I don't think that there is any virtue that is exclusive to man or exclusive to woman. But I do think that the biological interplay changes the value order, right? So it's like, the individual differences are obviously going to vary, right? But we're obviously going to, expect of women to be more nurturing, right? And being nurturing is a virtue that men
this
can
is where I hit the
also
buzzer.
inhabit.
Yeah, I have to hit the buzzer. I actually just think that men and women nurture differently. I don't even think that women are more nurturing than men. For example, think about training
Both
a
can
child
be true at the same time.
But I don't think they are though. I think the way that men.
But I never
nurture
said that
children
men. I never said that men were
what you
nurturing
said.
more.
Yeah, but what you said
that
was
we
we
value
expect
them
women.
differently.
Yeah, but you said we expect women to be more nurturing, right? Or that women are more nurturing.
Right. That is I didn't say that women are more nurturing. I said that it's a virtue that we both can inhabit. And I agree with you that the way that we nurture can be different, right? Like men tend to nurture older young boys and mentorship, right? Whereas women tend
even
to
small
focus
children,
more on
actually.
smaller children. Yes, again, there's going to be a lot of overlap. We're talking about distributions here, right?
Okay,
Like,
this is way more intellectual than
this?
maybe I want to
Men
go.
have
Hold on, stop. Let's ask Nonfon. Nonfon, you're the youngest. Do you mind if I say how old you are?
No, you can say I'm 19.
You're 19 years old. You're growing into being a man, right?
he's a baby boy. It's okay.
Yes, you're growing and things. What do you feel in what ways do you feel society treats you as a man that is different than they would treat a woman, right? In what ways
I
do you think
mean,
society puts responsibilities on you or expectations on you that is different than they do women?
obviously selective service, and I think that's, relatively fair. I think it's fair that we accept that men are, biologically typically going to be more suited
I'm
to
not
being...
talking so much the government. I'm talking like a person. Like if a person comes up to you on the street, right? How would they treat you different than if you had a sister the same age?
I don't know. I feel like people are... When it depends, is the person approaching me a man or
Violence.
woman? Obviously,
In general, we're
Violence
talking-
is the answer here, right? There's an inherent violence and expectation of reciprocation of violence in almost all things in society between men that isn't present and is shunned when dealing with women.
I on that note, I made a tweet, right? Just to kind of prime the pump for the topic, asking Twitter, Twitter, what does it mean to be to you to be a man? And I got answers of various kinds, but I also had someone threaten, like, challenge me to a fight. Like literally, they challenged me to a fight, a fist fight, right? They said I was bitch made, pussy, that I wouldn't fight them. It's like a fucking paragraphs, right? They must have paid for Twitter because it was way beyond the character limit of why I wouldn't fight them. I would never fight them. I was too weak to fight them, etc. Right? Really, just calling me out like that. That would not happen if I was a woman. It just wouldn't.
That's true. Fair enough.
Yeah, well,
For the most part, at least.
It'd be strange. It'd
Thank
be
you for
strange
agreeing with me,
versus,
Wick.
like,
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to put it in a more, a less
Yeah, I
intellectual.
think,
Like I see what you're saying, but I'm
less
trying to kind of dumb it
intellectual.
down for the masses, if you will, right?
Yeah, I think the truth is there's always the possibility of violence in the mind of a male, right? Our physicality is a part of what it means to be a male that just doesn't quite exist for females, right? So the reason why, like, Nonfon mentioned selective services is that implicit in our maleness, our existence as a male, we have the capability or the possibility of being violent or just even moving stuff around. Because being in selective services, if you get drafted, doesn't necessarily mean you have to fight. But like, as hands-on, repairing something, moving something, doing something in the military, so to speak, that is implicit because as males, right, that we're just it's in us. We're just built. Our testosterone just
And
makes
keep
us
in
there's
mind,
an
stronger,
inverse.
faster.
I just want to
There's
also,
an inverse to
I just
that,
want to
too.
also say, just
Yeah.
because I see some comments, like we're not talking about exclusivity. I'm sure you could find a woman that has challenged another woman to fight. I'm sure that happens,
But-
right?
but this is the
We're
thing with
talking
Assume that
generality.
everything everyone
Yeah,
says
like-
for the rest of the panel are generalizations, and that we understand that there are distributions and that outliers exist. Like, just assume
But-
that for everything
yeah.
said tonight, so we don't have to
But-
say that every sentence.
Exactly, but I think it's even important because I think the commenter, whoever is saying that, they may even be a female. They may not truly understand or grasp this, right? Because as you guys just said, it is indeed true that a woman could, threaten to fight another woman, as women do fight. But with males, it's implicit, it's built in. We know from go, since the time we were children, right? From rough and tumble play to being bullied, to being pushed in the lockers, or going into martial arts, watching movies, even reading books, we know our physicality, our ability to fight is extremely important. Like, for example, think about the Karate Kid,
Well-
right? The entire thesis of the film, right, is growing into manhood by learning how to protect yourself and why you should protect yourself and why you should use combat, in a defensive, protective manner, right? Like it's the battle between defense and offense, with Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do, just in that nature. But that's just one example of the films. You can go,
Right, but you're
on and on and on.
you're talking about the like, I agree with what you're saying, but like we have to then move on to the next step, right? And so I think the best way to look at this is from a functionalist perspective in psychology, like a Durkheimian perspective, which is that, like, when gender roles and beliefs get assigned to us and they stick around for centuries, then you kind of have to take this conservative approach, which is, well, if it sticks around for hundreds of years, then there's probably a reason it's stuck around. That doesn't mean that the reason's good or that the reason's bad, but that there's a reason it's there. And it goes beyond the innate biology of the male in being more physically dominant, but it also goes in the inverse, right? Which is that, like, no society that does not venerate the protection of the pregnant mother and children by those that do not get pregnant is a society that will last for any period of time, right? Like if your culture, 1,000 years ago didn't venerate pregnant women as something worth sacrificing male lives for, then your society died out, right? Like without that protection, you're not going to have the population necessary to sustain yourself in competition with other things. And so I think I agree with you, all that physicality is there, but what reinforces that, right, is this concept, kind of how Wick was talking about, of like sacrifice, even though I don't necessarily agree with it, and kinship theory, etc., right? That like what reinforces it is that there's a reason that behavior needs to be brought forward to another degree, and that is kind of that.
I disagree with you. That's the reason why I slightly disagree with you, is because we're highlighting the possibility of pregnancy with a female as a virtue, so to speak. But when in the example I used with the Karate Kid, right? Daniel isn't protecting a woman; he's protecting himself. And Wick wouldn't be protecting.
I agree that they're not directly linked. I'm talking about the greater social concept of like.
But that's what I'm saying.
Things.
But what I think is it goes even beyond just simply the.
Just
you would say the prioritization of females.
I want us to make this personal. I don't want us to go into in society, in the in the greater Western world, or this culture, that I want you, Tuna, I want you, SoyPill, I want you, Fabian, you personally. What do you think, right? And Tuna Chip, we're gonna give it to you. You're trying to get in.
This is what I think.
Xerxes, if you lost a fight, you probably would not get raped, and if you were raped, it wouldn't ruin your life in the same way that it would a woman who gets impregnated and forced to carry the child of it.
But I actually like that, because I don't think that that's true, right? You pretend.
No, it is true. You're not gonna. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do if you are bearing the child of the enemy, and you don't have the tools to like abort?
I'll tell you.
The whole point is there is part of the biological difference means that there are people who should be closer or further from combat, people who the domination of means capturing the vital resource that allows the perpetuation of a culture.
Is this what you think about when you fight?
There's a huge problem.
Hold on.
There's a huge issue here.
Stop, all of you, please. Oh my God.
But
maybe I didn't communicate what I wanted this panel to be. Maybe I was poor.
You brought up rape. All right, it's my turn to bring up Hitler.
Man. I'm still going to connect it to a personal thing.
Just real quick, like, is this what you think? Like, man, I gotta learn to fight to make like the history of the
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes,
that's what I'm saying. Wick, I'm here for it. Go ahead.
When I think about what it means to be a man, I think about potential and capacity. What am I uniquely fit to do that others in the society are not fit to do? What am I? And I have to think about what future possibilities are coming in. When somebody is going to pull a knife out against me and my fucking fiance, I'm going to step into the front of the fray, not because I'm like, I have this identity as a masculine and I have to sacrifice that cuck shit. No, it's because I know that the consequences that befall her are way worse than me. And first off, I also think that
you could die.
When it comes down
way worse. What? I'm so confused.
I have a new definition. This is what a man is. All right, a man is a person that watches a park bench in the snow and thinks, God, I would love to kill my enemies and bleed out there slowly.
But
all right, that's what it means to be a man.
We got to go back and forth for a bit, right? Because we started from a couple of different premises, which I think are very interesting and telling. We start with the question of if I were to lose a fight and get raped, right? Would I suffer the same consequences as a female? Now, technically speaking, a female is not guaranteed to get impregnated just because she got raped once. Technically speaking, right? As such, it is impossible for me to be
weird technically, but okay.
Raped, right? But it's true and it's important, right? Because what you did was you completely bypassed the social ramifications of me being raped as a male, and you then bypassed the physical trauma of me being raped, right? You just went completely into. Hold on.
You think that men? This is important.
That's what you did.
I'm not bypassing for no reason. I'm bypassing because I think.
So you have a reason. Go ahead.
There's symmetry there. You're talking about things that are symmetrical, if only in proportion, but not in their like felt characteristic. But yeah, you being raped and a woman being raped both have social consequences for both of you. Both have trauma consequences for both of you. And fundamentally, fewer people want to rape you. you're less likely to get raped upon the fight. You already skipped past the
You
first
don't
part.
do
which I'm
ad
saying,
homs, Tuna.
the
Come on.
quantum
But you were the one that.
Well, unless you're in
but hold on.
prison.
I'm addressing what you said, and also that's true unless you're in prison. But I'm addressing what you said. That's what you set up, and that's what we're contending with. Because I don't disagree
I'm
that
trying to talk about
overwhelmingly, right?
Okay.
But
ahead.
I'm addressing what you said, right?
Yeah.
So the thing I wanted to highlight on the front end is that you disregarded the humanity of the male in order to prioritize
No.
what the biological ability of the female is. And that is what you
Wrong.
did. Because you did. You
No,
said
I
that
don't
it would be
think that
worse for the
first off,
female if she got
that's
raped.
not disregarding the humanity. I'm not saying that I don't care when men get raped. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying that the consequences are different.
Yeah, you're saying the consequences
even-
for a
even if
female
I-
are
even-
exclusive, which doesn't really matter. Like, okay,
Some of them
so
are,
It
yes.
really
a
doesn't.
woman
It
can
doesn't
get
matter. It
a
means
woman
that
can
there
get
is a
pregnant. A man could
distinction.
get anal tears and get AIDS and die.
Yeah.
Like, you know what?
And there-
Who
that's
gives
a
a
great
shit?
point.
Like,
Yeah.
this
So can a
is
woman.
stupid. Like,
But-
why is that somehow exclusive to a man that the consequences are slightly different? Like you talked about, okay, like if a guy comes up and tries to stab me, I'm gonna step in. Why? Because the consequences might be slightly worse for a woman if she gets raped and pregnant. Okay, what if he just tries to stab both of you? It's equally bad. Like,
Well, no,
you're
this is-
You
you're
wouldn't
so,
feel
like-
the same obligation to
but-
step
but
in if
hold
it's
on.
a woman,
I
if
need-
one
I
woman
need-
is stronger than the
I
other
need-
woman,
I-
right?
No,
I know.
stop,
Let me-
everyone, shut up right now.
Let me
because we're all
reply.
trying to talk at once. That both of you.
I need to highlight one thing before you continue, though, because I had 2 points. I wanted to highlight one thing.
You're
I'll
only
just
on
let it go.
4.1, gang. We
So-
got a limited amount of time tonight. Let's.
I know.
Can I respond
So
to the direct?
so real fast.
To the direct imposition.
I have to lay out one thing real fast.
Oh
And
my
the one thing
God,
I'm gonna
I'm
lay
gonna
out
kill
real
myself.
fast.
I'm gonna get
I
changed
apologize
to
to the
the
chick. Hold on. I'm gonna resurrect you, bro. I'm gonna resurrect you. So listen.
Go ahead.
The one
You
thing
ain't
that's
got that in your
important
power.
here is that you didn't highlight one of the most important things about why you would protect your girlfriend, and that is actually your love and benevolence for her. It's not simply because you're a male that you'll jump in front of her. It's because you care about her. Now you roll your eyes, but this is extremely
No,
important.
I'm saying
Because what you're saying is the reason why I'm going to throw myself here is not because I love her and I care about her, my humanity for this woman. It is because of my role or position as a male, which
Okay.
even then
No.
isn't
Okay.
even a counter argument to the
we gotta give it to
physicality
Tuna to respond.
of
We gotta give
males.
it to Tuna to respond. Go ahead.
Okay, I disagree with you. Conversation, you don't just say things and make distinctions. I characterized with a very specific pointed axis that I know that there are different likelihoods for the future between me and her. I know that the consequences that befall those things happening and my ability to define myself, to prepare for those situations by trying to make it so that I am ready for conflict so that she doesn't have to be, because I know that it's going to work out better if I am. All of the planning that goes in. You have to think before the stabbing. You have to think, and you also have to think wider than the implications of this. I'm just talking about one of several different opportunities where biological difference needs to necessarily change the way that we socially structure.
I think you're both wrong.
If it's going to be,
Let
if
me-
it's going to
let
be
me
an
say why they're both
individual's
wrong.
conflict like that, it's very obvious.
Okay, let me
But if
maybe
it's going to be
short
something else,
circuit this.
the ramifications are what made gender be the way they are.
Let me maybe just short circuit this all, and I'll just make a very simple, a very true statement. I'm trying to get to the raw stuff, gang, and we're going oh, the biological imperative.
Raw is what makes her pregnant.
This
buddy.
is the raw. This is the raw. Like the question entails. The question
I get what Wick is
entails
saying. Yeah.
two concepts, like what you as an individual
If
aspire to,
me and my
the
girlfriend,
social
wife,
context.
or a child was attacked, and I failed to protect them, I would feel like and be less of a man.
By your
That's it.
definition, yes.
So hold on, like so I think we're missing the kind of the thing here, right? And the problem is that we're trying to individuate all of these separate concepts of what a man is instead of recognizing that they're all connected, right? So Tuna Chip is correct, and Xerxes, you're both kind of hitting on two correct things, and I think that there's a bridge here, and that might be like where the miscommunication is, which is Xerxes, you're like, hey, nobody's thinking in the moment like this like rational step-by-step list of things. What I think Tuna Chip, and correct me if I'm wrong, is trying to say is that if we think about situations like that, and we can descriptively say that genders are affected differently, then we can extrapolate from that why it is that society has these expectations on us and why it is that we grow up with these expectations. It is the corpus of human history where women are
I'm more
vulnerable,
capable
where
of
women
protecting them than they are. That's it.
But see, this is what I
That's
do.
it.
it's not- but that's not
that.
it. But no-
That's it. It's
but
not a
that's not
societal
true.
expectation. I am
Yeah,
better.
no,
that's
I
just
promise,
false.
everyone I have ever dated, I was the one that was better able to protect.
Right.
In
But
that
that's
situation.
not
Before
why
you-
you
before
do
you're
it.
in-
But that's
before you're in
not
that
why
relationship.
But
society
you're right.
has that
That
expectation.
is why
You don't
I
think
do
we
it.
have a responsibility there?
If
Oh my
I
God,
knew
no,
that
but
they had a
there's
better
bigger
chance,
problem.
I'd
You're
let
being
them
silly.
do it.
You're being silly.
It's
let
not
me
silly.
bridge this gap.
That's
You
just
are being
it.
silly. Let me bridge this for you, Wick. Right? Like I recognize that yes, in the overwhelming majority of the time, unless you're dating Ronda Rousey, right? Like you're going to be more capable. And so there's a certain element where you go, well, if I'm more capable, then like I ought to be the one that steps up. But why is it that society ingrains the male with the concept of sacrifice? Society ingrains the male.
This is what I was
with
talking about
these
before. Men
concepts.
have more of
And
that
it's-
physicality, so that's what it used to be. But the fact that we're talking about these like stabbing, raping
but they're
situations
all
is ridiculous because
It's
this is not what
one
happens to people on a
case.
day-to-day basis. Like, yeah, sure,
right.
in a very specific scenario, a man might be a better a defender of a woman. But yeah, like Tuna, how many times have you had to defend your fiance from a stabbing? How many times have you had to stop her from getting raped? Like, this is so ridiculous if we're talking about what does a man do in society? Yeah, sure,
That's
we're
not-
probably
that-
on
hold on,
average
that's
stronger.
not how
You
societies
are
work.
missing the
No, but
point.
like
Soy
we as
has
a
to
society,
credit-
hold on.
no, but-
We as a society obsess over mass shootings, but mass shootings are an infinitesimally small amount of shootings
But
that
Soy
occur in
has a point.
America.
But
But what we
hold
have to
on.
understand is that culture is shaped by the extremes. And so if we're talking about cultural expectations and gender roles, I agree with you that the day-to-day interactions of the male are not going to be sacrificing himself to like stop the bullet. But it is also, we have to recognize that those extremes are the things that affect culture to such a degree. And so they have more power in shaping gender roles and in shaping how we
And I
act.
also,
I wanna
I would also,
reinforce-
if I may, I would also disagree with SoyPill here that
What's-
it is something we do on a regular basis. I walk a woman home when it's dark. I walk on the side of the sidewalk that's closer to danger, right? Because again, this is something that even in the mannerisms even in the mannerisms of how we interact day to day life, men, right, tend to, right, put themselves in positions where they can be protectors, and they act as such, and they should act as such. And I'm saying that this should happen. They should act as such so that they protect.
Uh-oh.
Point. I want to reinforce it because he made a great point, right?
Let him speak.
Because one thing that we kind of skipped over, right? And I know we're not supposed to talk about, the other half of our species just yet, but I do think this is important because on the day to day, and even, you know what, not just quite yet, let's also talk about between males as well. It is very, very easy to take away the man card, right? So to Soy's point, right? When we think of or when we take away what does it mean to be a man from another man, oftentimes it's because he might act like in an effeminate way, in a girly way, in a weak way even, right? If he is showing his emotion or if he's being vulnerable at that point in time. There's a lot of ladies that will definitely yoink the man card if you're not providing for them, if you're not giving them the money that they ask for. They'll say you're not a
Just
man.
give
And
them
they'll
the ick.
use it. Hold on. There's that, you basically they'll use the title of man or they'll take away the title of man in order to manipulate you to get you to work in the way they want you to work. So while you guys are indeed talking about why do we have this concept of protector because we're more capable and stronger, to Soy's point, that's not when people comment and talk about it. It's when they want to manipulate you. It's when they want to use you. It's when they want to take something from you. Then they challenge whether or not you are or not a man. This happens between guys and girls. It's just society in general.
Yeah,
Would
it's
that be
just
fair
a
to say,
tool,
Soy?
like the concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The concept is just used to enforce the behavior we want to happen, and some of it, like I said, yeah, we're deemed as protectors in society because we're on average stronger. But Wick, come on, like, yeah, sure, you're walking home a lot. You're being that protector. You're standing on the side of danger. You're probably like, oh, like let me look out, make sure there's no one coming into the room that might hurt this person. But are you really getting in a freaking knife fight every day? Are you like you're just
even
beating
if
people
he's
off
not
of you,
getting
the woman you're walking home? Like, yeah. This is like
Even if he's not getting in a
But
knife
that's
fight
the
every day,
curse,
don't we
right?
think it's
My
probably
presence makes him safe.
Yeah, don't we think
Well,
it's probably a
ironically.
value add to society to have some expectation that men who are generally more capable of defending people are typically are protecting women
I
at
agree.
night or
I
whatever?
agree to whatever you're about
I
to
would
say.
say
Actually,
yes.
just take the word man out. Just whoever's more capable.
No,
That's why I'm going to
Well,
suggest my
I
fiance
agree,
owns a
but
fucking handgun.
I mean, I agree.
You know?
I would
okay.
entail the same obligation to a more, capable woman walking home with another woman. But I'm just saying, generally, men are going to be more
Yeah,
capable
if you
than a
want to talk
woman,
about
so
how
it's-
because men are average, on average, are stronger, it should be virtuous and encouraged for the people that are stronger, which are going to be men on average, to defend people that are weaker than them. 100%. And if we, I think that's actually a really good point. Let's talk about, okay, there are some things that are sexually innate with people. Okay, men are on average stronger. Let's encourage people to defend people who can't help themselves. That's great. But that's not exclusive to men. It's kind of weird to call it like a masculine thing when a female could do it just as well.
It's not weird unless you're
It's not weird
convinced
at
that
all.
masculinity needs to be defined as this thing that is inherently always 100% without exception. It can't be 50% plus. It can't like, if you don't care about probability, if you don't care about tendency, if you don't care about principles that lead towards best outcomes when abstracted from, then yeah, you can be like obsessed with this like letter of the law thing, but like
Women do masculine shit, men do feminine shit, and it's not
yeah,
always bad.
we all know that. But also fundamentally,
like, look
what
at Tom
happens
Holland,
if there aren't
right?
enough men, if there aren't enough
He just
men
went
Maybe that is
viral
kinda
who are
bad.
like
dancing,
going
like
against
he
their
just went
self-interest.
viral dancing, as Rihanna, right? And like was celebrated for it, right? Because he was competent and because he's embodying all these other masculine traits. But what he's doing is the most feminine shit you could ever do, right? He's
So then
singing
he was probably equally
Rihanna
ridiculed
to
as well.
Umbrella. Right, but
Promote the capacity,
for
yeah.
sure. But a lot of other people were praising him for that.
Well, let's
And
talk
so
about
you
that.
have to
Hold
think
on.
about how
obviously
subversive-
feminine.
Oh my god, I hate you all. My hatred level for every single one of you is rising as
Can
we
I
go.
try finish my
masculine?
my thing?
You can finish your point.
I'm just
Yeah, I
saying,
just
'cause
straight up steamrolled you. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's just I got to run. What I'm trying to, because I also think that there's a bridge, because me and Fabian are pretty much on the same side of this, with maybe like a slight leaning of difference. But it's like, what I'm saying is not necessarily at the knife fight. I'm not talking, and I don't think that. And when you say Wick he's walking, Wick's trying to say that his presence, but there's also
Are you
like
holding a box
the
cutter right now?
presence of men inside of society,
Very manly.
and like what men are in a society changes the lives of women. If there aren't enough men who are going to step in and intervene when another man tries to take advantage of his natural, not gifted by anything other than just pure chance advantage over women, then you get cultures that are full of gang rapes. You get cultures that are full of pickpockets. You need to have a culture that defines men and thinks of men and tries its best to create men.
The ability.
No, I
kinda
completely
sounds like-
disagree. You're trying to make
I'm
this
not done.
exclusively. This
Let
is
me finish.
ridiculous.
Let me-
What he's trying to do
I
is
hate
I'm
men.
kind of
virtue.
scared. I want to let you
Can I
finish. You're
finish
holding
my
a
sentence?
knife. Yeah, go ahead.
Here, don't be a coward. It's a fucking box knife, and it's through the
I'm
internet.
be honest
man.
with you, Tuna Chip. Tuna Chip, it kind of sounds like you're saying men need to be virtuous.
It's not that men need to be virtuous.
If you're saying that,
They just
that
need to do
men-
good things. that I
Well,
think are
okay.
good
If he
in
doesn't
society.
finish,
Let
we'll
me
never
fucking say
finish.
my sentence.
Well, he's not
Okay,
gonna
this is
finish.
on me. I recruited this panel. This is my fault. I'm gonna, as a man, you should take responsibility for your actions. You're all yappers, okay? Every single goddamn one of you.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
not that men need
Not
to be
Nonfon.
virtuous. It's that
Nonfon's been
society wants men to be virtuous. It's in society. It's in women's best interest. So they, as they have their thumb on the fucking scale to define what a man is, just like everybody else does, they are going to enforce it, just like the state wants people that are patriotic, yada yada yada. It's not that it's good for men or definitive of men. It's just like that's what's going to make for a better culture. So if you have interest beyond just yourself as an individual, it's not what's the best way to be a man to me. There's also like, what do other people want of me? And you're going to be
Yes, it's connected.
I don't think that's
And that
virtue,
sounds
man.
Okay,
like
hold on.
being
Yeah, Fabian's gonna hate me for
I'm
this.
holding a
Or
weapon
me.
now. It's my turn to talk. Okay, so I have a gun. I'm the most manly on the panel, and what you're saying could just as easily be justified to promote a religion or any other stupid ideology. I'm not saying what you're saying is stupid, but the justification is ridiculous. Like, oh well, it makes men do better things, therefore we should promote it and make it exclusive to men. Like, why? Okay, well, why don't we just have a religion that just tells everyone to do good things and have that be state mandated? Like,
I mean-
this is stupid. Like Okay, yeah, sure. Telling men not to protect younger women makes them less likely to do gang rape and pickpocket, I guess. But like,
It's not
why?
telling them. It's not telling them. It's producing an identity and encouraging structures that make it so that people feel affirmed in an identity that doesn't do that. You can't just
Seems like
tell
there's a
men
word
not to
for
rape
that.
it. I mean, a gun is a
word.
great
There's-
way, and
what
this is the
word
thing that,
would that
that comes
be?
up.
Oh,
A gun
geez.
is a great way to make it so that the difference between men and women is less important. That's one of the great, the great equalizer, as it gets called. And it's very important towards history. It's one of the main reasons that conversations like this have any substance at all.
But then can't we? But then isn't Soy making a greater point then? Like the moment you give the ghost that a gun is a great equalizer, right? And any woman can just grab a firearm. Why then we males should we be responsible for them at all? Once it's been equalized and they can use deadly force, why is there
it's an
still the title of
equalizer?
male?
Okay,
Yeah, you
so
don't
it's a
want
force
everybody
multiplier.
having
So
a gun.
so to Soy's point, right? I think there's something that needs to be considered because there's something about being a male, right? There's something about being born as a male where there is a title, there are expectations that are put upon you, right? And Soy is challenging that, which I think is interesting.
Does
Now, I'll
anything-
challenge
Well, I
Soy.
think there's
Hold on,
expectations that are
I
reasonable
do-
to put on
I
men
want
because they're a
to go. I
value
want to
add.
go a direction with this, and it's my show. I'm going to go the direction I want to go. Is it wrong? Is it bad? Is there something immoral
And that's-
or negative about of men, right? Males, if you want to call them that, men being the protectors in a society.
I
I
would say
say
no.
no.
Not innately.
And that's what I wanted to challenge. So I would still challenge Soy because I think that words and titles are just tools. Language is just a tool to define.
Let me ask
something.
Nonfon.
So-
Nonfon, do you feel right, Nonfon? Because you're the only good one here, and you're gonna get rewarded. Okay, Nonfon, do you feel that put upon that society expects you to protect others? Do you feel like that's a negative? Be honest.
I don't think it's a negative as a general principle. I weigh 110 pounds, so
You,
most
personally.
most people do not expect me to protect women. So me personally, I don't feel like there's much responsibility placed on me from society. Obviously, I am in selective service, but I also don't think I don't think it's a bad thing to entail some expectations upon men because I do think it's an overall value add for
What would
society.
you say would be a good expectation on men?
That we
overall?
are generally responsible for protecting women from
Okay.
other
What
threats.
other
I think that's
good
fine.
expectations?
I would protect Nonfon if he was on
I
the
would
street
too.
and someone was
Same.
attacking him.
Yeah.
Okay, it has nothing to do with Nonfon's gender, of which I do not know. I'm assuming you're male, and you know what? That's fine. And I don't think that this idea, this expectation that is put on men, is actually a good thing because a person like Nonfon is now going to be called, "Oh, you're not a real man because you're only 110 pounds and you can't fight off a 200-pound attacker." Like that's a ridiculous statement. I'm sure Nonfon's a great guy. He probably does lots of great things. He's got a Joe Biden thing, so I'm assuming he's amazing. Like it's just stupid to say, well, a man should do this, and then if you can't do this, you're not a real man. I think that's
Well,
an incredibly harmful.
I agree. I
harmful
think there's a
thing.
lot of people who like use. I think it's actually primarily men who use like the term "real man" as a as like a tool against people. But I mean, I feel like
I've encountered it
Yeah,
more.
I don't
from
know.
women.
I don't know
I'm
if I'd
dead
say
ass.
one gender does it
Yeah.
more than the other in this case.
Yeah.
Because I've heard
I don't know.
women say that, I've heard men say that, I've heard a lot of people say that. But I
It's a form
want
of
to push
social
back on that a
Personally,
little
I
bit,
get more
right?
social
This
pressure
idea
from
that
men.
you guys are, if I may, that you guys are saying that like it's bad that people think less of Nonfon as a man in this role because he is less able to protect and fulfill the role that society expects of him. I don't, and maybe this is a hot take, I don't necessarily think that's bad. I think that Nonfon should. It would be better for Nonfon if he was more able to protect himself and others. I think that would be a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
So,
better, but are you
if I
saying
can-
that then
if I
he
can-
is worse off for not being able to do that, right? Like, are we going to
Well,
like
he is,
sue-
like by
Yeah,
definition,
physically,
worse
yeah,
off.
but like,
Hold
are you
on.
going to shame him and say he's not as much of a man as
Shame?
I am?
No.
Like, are you going to say that someone who's paraplegic isn't as much of a man? I
I'll
mean,
tell you
unless
what,
they're literally
You would have
losing
to
their legs.
if I have a
Literally,
mission,
yes.
if I have a
Soy is
mission to
right,
go
though.
in,
Literally, yes.
if I have a mission to go
Cripples
in
are
and
less
do
human.
something that requires lots of strength, I'm going to
missing
pick the
limbs.
strong person in that instance.
Sure,
rather
you
than
can
Nonfon.
value strength. You can value someone who can
Yes.
protect you. That's obvious and easy. I'm not arguing against that. Like to say anything otherwise is stupid. But I'm saying that you shouldn't say, "Oh, you're not a real man," or put some arbitrary definition of unless you meet
There are
this
more-
exact
okay.
standard of how
And
valuable
this is
you
the
are to
important
me.
thing, is because there are more qualities to being a man than just this one that we've been stuck on for the last
It's
48
annoying.
minutes.
I'm
Okay,
Can I
this is one single aspect of being a man that I think matters. It does, but there are so many more that I want to talk about that Nonfon might be better than I am, right, at these things.
Yeah.
Um,
So I just want to say, like, there's a couple of things I think we should just kind of focus on here a little bit. You know, we have to recognize that when we have a gender role, right, this is a cultural expectation, right? It's socially constructed within the culture that you have about what that gender role is. And what that gender role is really saying is this is what we value as a culture, and this is what we expect of people within the culture. And so it's important to recognize a couple of things once you get in that space, is that you can't have those values be at an individual moment, right? Because these gender roles are instantiated throughout our development and throughout our growth. And so if you want a society that has certain values and has certain expectations of men and women, then that has to be an ever persistent thing within your culture that isn't individuated to individual instances of you failing or succeeded so much, but is a constant variable. And so, stop. You just keep saying virtue, and it's retarded.
I wonder what that word is. I can only imagine what word
You're making me visualize you drowning. I'm thinking about your head underwater every time you talk.
All right. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I would also defend Xerxes.
But here's the thing, right? If you recognize that you have a gender role that is imposing virtue upon people as a general category, because you value certain things within that virtue, it necessitates the devaluing of those that do not represent that virtue. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot have a culture that values strength in men and then simultaneously have a culture that does not devalue weakness in men. You cannot have a culture that values mentorship, of younger men from older men within businesses or, leadership positions, and then at the same time not also gatekeep and devalue those things. You can't say, oh, we're going to get rid of the you're not a real man for these things, but we'll also somehow magically keep a culture and a society that values these good things.
Wait, why not?
It's not possible.
Why can't you just say, okay, this has nothing to do with what defines your gender or what role you're supposed to go in, but hey, we're going to value if you can help us. We're going to value if you can lift more things. We're going to value if you can protect people. It has nothing to do with whether or not...
You don't value something, right? If you can absolutely, like, you don't actually value something at a cultural level.
Unless it's gender...
No, I'm not saying it has to be gender defined in this regard.
Well, you just said we can't say throw out the real man, but not value the things that they have.
I'll give you a very simple example here.
Can I give a
very
shot?
Simple.
Then how do men grow up?
Okay, so I value $20. I value it. I would keep it. I think $20 is great, and I want to fight to have it. Right?
There's a man on that.
Great, and if you want to,
see Andrew Jackson.
Give me some super chat.
Hated the banks.
I would value you. But you know what? I value $100 more than that. That doesn't mean I don't value $20.
Yeah, and if you had $20 and $100 and you were going to use these to defend yourself on the street, they would be equally fucking useless.
We don't need to do this obfuscation shit that is driving me mad.
SoyPill.
Right, but that means you're going to choose the $100 over the $20.
Yes, but that doesn't make $20 any less valuable than $20.
It literally does.
But
it's inherently less valuable.
You're missing maybe a core component that like bridges this, which is that people are not born men. They're not born adult men. They're not born fully formed. They have potential. When they are a child, it is important to cultivate certain aspects based on the probability of return. You're not going to have a culture that is constantly trying to turn women into men and men into women. And I'm not trying to make some trans point here. I'm saying if you tried to make a hypothetical culture that just switched the roles, it would be less efficient because you'd be running against the fucking wind. There are reasons that these are working. They're more efficient. They work better over time. They're certainly going to match people psychologically on a higher rate of return. With the rough and tumble play as a classic example. Rough and tumble play also great for women because males, more powerful, need to know how much force they can exert and in a safe domain.
But I'll be honest with you,
Women,
ToonKritic,
they
We're
can
training
find
men
ways
to
can
fight
fight
women.
somebody, and it's much less likely to do the same
No,
damage.
actually, we're
on
training
accident.
men to not hurt.
but
women.
I don't think we would disagree. But I
By
kind of
fighting.
I want to frame a scenario utilizing Nonfon. This might be rude. I apologize in advance, right?
Go ahead.
But there's a point that was being made, and you made this point where you say that other men say that you're not a real man, or they use that against you because I think you say you weigh like 110 pounds. And Wick made a point where he was saying that you are less capable of defending yourself at 110. And Soy made a point that it would be ridiculous to have the expectation that you would defend anyone at 110. I actually agree with all of this. What I find interesting is how I would split the difference between addressing that. And I think that this is kind of the core of what maybe Wick is saying about what it means to be a man to me, or what it would mean to all of us. Because from my point of view, if I see a man who is weak, my first instinct is to protect him. And then my second would be to train him so he can protect himself later. So I would try to help you. I would never be like, well, you suck. I would be like, okay, well, let's try to figure out what are you good at. I'd even try to get you into, combat arts, martial arts, all that different stuff, workout plan. In my mind, helping you in the immediate would be coming to your defense, but helping you in the long term would be giving out a plan or telling you my experiences,
To help
right? And
you
that's how
Very
value,
nice.
you, right?
to help you
And so-
value,
It's very nice of
like
you, Xerxes.
society values
so-
I would
strength.
also say with
Xerxes.
this.
So
But yeah,
now
but-
the reason why I'm framing all of this, and I'll wrap it up with this, and the reason why I'm framing all of this is because the difference between how I came about it, right, is nurturing, right, is kindness. But the way other men came about it, by disregarding your masculinity, by saying you're not a real man, is in a way like violent, right? It's it's aggressive, and it doesn't really help with anything. The point that I'm trying to get across, right, is that it is important to have that physicality and that strength, but how you go about developing it is, I think, the core of what it means to be a man. And right, and that's
using
why
it,
I
right.
refer to virtue, and that's why I talk about it so much.
Hold
you know
on,
what
if
I'm
I may, because this is important. Being
Mm-hmm.
strong doesn't make you a man. It's how you use that strength.
Exactly,
That's what
right?
makes you a man.
Yeah,
Being
and that's what Wick wants to talk
smart
about. Yeah.
doesn't make you a man. It's how you use that education that you have that makes you a man. These qualities that we have isn't what makes us man. It's not what defines or should define manhood. And to the extent that it does, it is, as they say, and I don't want to use this phrase, but I will, toxic, right? It is toxic. What we need to do, what men need to do, what should define a man are the positive utilizations of the characteristics that we teach ourselves to develop. Let me just ask a simple question here. You could just raise your hands if you agree, okay? Who here thinks that men, would be better off if they were more educated? Raise your hand. Okay. Who thinks a man would be better off if they were more physically fit? Raise your hand. Who thinks a man would be better off if he had more resources, was more wealthy? Okay, so these are values, right, that we can instill in how to use and become these things while using those things that we gain in a way that benefits society. That's what it means to be a man. We go through all these like intellectual rigor and things like that, and that's fine, but at the core, it's really those three things, in my opinion. Education, that's combined with intelligence, right? There's a relation there, right? Strength and protection, right? And how they're related, and wealth, resources, and using it to the benefit of those around you. Those three things. It's really simple.
Okay, I have an issue with
Go
what Tuna Chip said because the implication that we must keep doing these male enforced gender roles because if we were for some reason to arbitrarily switch and start telling all women that they're strong and they need to protect and then tell men that they're feminine and they need to nurture, that it wouldn't work as well is true, but also just a ridiculous hypothetical that is based on this weird like utilitarian thing. I'm not saying that it's not working in terms of, hey, we're telling stronger people to do stuff with their strength that makes sense. I'm just saying that we don't need to tell them that it's only because they're man that they are strong and they should do this. So it's this kind of weird like utilitarian argument that I just really don't agree with at all.
Saying that it's
okay,
good
can
that
I-
a man is strong, doesn't it take anything away? Like I'm seeing this in chat, so this isn't just you, SoyPill. So I apologize if I'm putting too much on you here, But I keep seeing this all the time. Like,
I
well,
can
women
lift it,
could be
it's
this
fine.
too. Women could be that too. Women should do this too. Okay, I don't care. We're talking about women next week. Tune in. We can discuss that with them. We're talking about men. Okay.
The internet's inability to understand a standard distribution.
I want to talk
this
about
fucking
women.
game where we compare, right? Like, well, what about women? We're not. Shut up about women.
If we're talking
don't
about things
care.
exclusive to men, we have to talk about women.
Bill,
Rick. They're part of the
it's
conversation.
Not, you're
But I
you're
think
the one
sometimes,
bringing
yeah, but-
exclusivity. You're the one bringing exclusivity.
Well,
no
no,
one
women
here-
do it too. No, women do it
No
too.
one's here saying that
Like
shit.
women, hold on. But that,
Oh my
but
God.
even if no one here is saying that shit, it is the case that there is something about being man where we are given the title man, and there's something about being a man where we take away the title man. And women do it all of the time.
Yeah, it's an
we
erotic
can talk about
attachment to
women,
certain
but
expectations and roles. When
Mhm.
you feel bad because someone calls you a bitch or a FAG or somebody calls you anything that's supposed to challenge
can't
your
say that word.
masculinity.
Okay.
No, we
maybe-
cannot say
maybe
that
you
word on
feel
Twitter.
I didn't
proud
realize we
when
could say
they-
that word. Go ahead.
The whole point of these things that are meant to like hold, because it's been mentioned a couple of times, this idea of social control by way of removing the affirmation of the identity. The whole point there is that somebody has a personal relationship with that thing. You don't know what it is exactly, but you remove it because you know that the person has it. So the fact that we know that almost every man that identifies as such, you know, there's a reason they identify with it. They think that there's something there. They think it has some kind of value. It's been defined to them by their life and the people around them. They see a person removing that identity or deaffirming it as like some form of you know, fighting words. That's the reason that it's there. You're trying to just like fucking rile somebody up. But it doesn't mean that there is a universal, objective thing that someone is trying to say to you. They are saying, I want you to be upset. That's what they're really saying. I don't like you. I want to get on your nerves. I want to
It's like calling a woman fat.
It's like someone calling
It's
someone
based.
fat.
It's
No, I
based in
disagree.
some
It's more
level of
complex than
a
that.
distinction of your lack of virtue, you know, compared to the gender role, right? But in that moment, in that individual instance, yeah.
It's just to start a fight. It's just to like rile you up. So like I don't think
No,
they
it's
might
to
have
enforce
thoughts
a
that are involved
behavior,
in it.
right? It's
They
to
might
tell
have
someone
thoughts
how
that
to
they think,
act.
I'm going to
Yeah.
rile this guy up because I think only men who weigh more than 110 pounds should be alive. Like they might be they might have their own.
No, I
personal
completely
thing
disagree.
motivating
This is
them.
not
no,
to
it's-
start a
it's
fight.
both.
It's to enforce something
SoyPill.
specifically.
SoyPill, you're right. It's again, this is the problem with not recognizing that individual circumstances are connected to the greater social context and vice versa, right? You're both correct, right? In the individual instance that the person challenges your masculinity, more often than not, it's not actually to enforce a behavior, it's to shame you, it's to try and
Those are
find a
two
way to
things at the
get
same
under your
time.
skin, right? Exactly, it's both, right? And SoyPill, you're also correct that the greater context of why these insults work, why that insult affects that person in that way, is because they grow up in a culture that has those expectations, right? So the individual usage has to be encapsulated within the greater social context and of the
Right,
gender
but I'm
roles
saying that
and
the
how they
individual
exist.
uses is more often than not to enforce that behavior. Like, yeah, sometimes it's like, oh, you're a little bitch, you're a weak little man, but most of the time it's, hey, you're fucking weak. Go to the gym, man up, stop crying, man up, go get a job, man up, go provide for me. This is almost primarily used as a
Maybe.
tool to enforce a behavior.
Maybe I
They
don't
may
have
know
I don't have
who
a
you
good
are.
date on it, but I would say that most of the time I would agree with Tuna Chip. But maybe you're right? Like I would think more often than not when someone's calling you, you know, the F slur, they're not actually trying to change
And
your
that's
behavior so much.
sure, in that
as-
example, for
that
sure, yeah.
they're more often than not just trying to rally you up. But it is within that context of the gender role. You know, shifting only because Wick has begged us to do so often and into a more
do have
individual
something on this
circumstance,
specifically, though.
right?
I do have something
Oh,
on this
goddamn. Well,
specifically.
I was
though.
gonna shit. Okay, fine.
Wick
Let
is
me
the
just say this.
moderator.
It's a simple question. It's a simple question. You guys got to respond because I think there are instances where we'd all agree that someone who is male isn't a real man. We would all agree with that. They're not. You're not
I would
real
literally not agree with that.
I don't.
So-
I mean,
Specifically
that's
this
true.
reason.
man. Dude
Wait to
dude that
prison, SoyPill.
beats the shit out of
Yeah,
his
no, I
wife,
agree.
knocks her up, then leaves her, doesn't pay child support, lets her suffer. You think that's a real man?
I think that's a man because he's a man, right? It has nothing to do
male.
with some arbitrary
Autism.
gender role, right?
It's the
That's
only
ridiculous.
analogy possible here.
But you would say
attachment to
morally.
the most banal take on conversation that could possibly exist.
But
Literally
question,
I was gonna say, why are you more threatening without the knife? Now?
but so hold on. So, but you would say that an individual who does that, if a male was to assault his wife and then abandon her and his children, you would say that that's morally repugnant, right? You
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, that's what I'm
not a way
saying.
a
Is the
person
reason you say that's not a real man is because we think that's bad, and we're like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Meanwhile,
good that we
how many
think that's
millions
bad,
of fucking
and that's
people
good that
worship
we
Andrew
enforce
Tate,
this
a
behavior,
sex
and that's-
trafficking male, beater, wife beater guy? They say,
hold
oh,
on.
he's a real
Let
man,
me
ask
right?
you a question.
It's just
Let me- I got a question.
cool.
No,
There's a difference.
ISO for
Hold
a
on.
second.
There's a
Hold on.
difference.
Hold on.
There's
I
a
have to ask you
difference
a
between
question.
man
Hold on.
and real man.
That's exactly.
Okay,
but hold on.
that's the thing here, right?
That's
like
the problem.
a man.
That's what we have to ask. Hold on.
Okay.
That's what we have to clarify with Soy first. Because Soy, would you see any utility?
We don't need
in
his
a
clarification.
Standard...
We can just explain.
No, we do. I can
He
just talk to him
knows.
because he
He
disagrees.
knows.
I need
We've
to
had this
convince
conversation
him.
3 times, Xerxes.
So-
In this conversation, we've had this statement 3 fucking times.
So let's
We
make it one
know.
more time.
Yeah, but you don't
Before
agree
time's
with me,
charm.
so obviously you don't get it.
So, but Soy, let me ask you a question. Do you think that there would be a utility to a code of conduct, so to speak, which might even be better to call chivalry, bushido, anything else? Is there a code of conduct you would accept that a male in society should operate in?
Yes,
Would you
obviously.
maintain that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
said
But
at the
you
very beginning.
don't
That's
like-
what gender
but you
rules
don't-
are.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That's what you
So-
said. The virtuous thing. You were agreeing with me. Yeah, you didn't need to clarify.
Exactly.
I can't believe I'm saying this. I agree with Tuna Chip.
Are
Okay.
men more obligated to some actions than women are?
People
Yes!
with more responsibility
Yes!
are more obligated, and that is sometimes men in terms of defending people because
Okay,
they're
yes,
straight.
but
Yes.
are men as a group, do they have something that they're more obligated to as a group, each individual in that party, than people in the group of women do?
Especially in society
Yes,
now? Sure.
losing in
100%.
family court.
Yes, and losing in family court, apparently. I knew someone was going to bring that up.
I had to.
Can I hear the start of that sentence again, SoyPill?
Yeah, I'm just yeah, of course. This is the society we live in. Men have gender rules exist. Just because I think they shouldn't be enforced in the way that shames people does not mean they don't exist. It is very obvious that as a whole, men do have a greater expectation, a greater responsibility for various things. Obviously, yes.
Okay.
Okay,
And
but if someone is beating their wife, right, would you say that you should enforce the gender role of the virtue that you're espousing, or would you say that you shouldn't?
Yeah, but I'm just saying it doesn't have to be that gender role. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be like, oh, hey, don't shame him. Whoa, don't say he's not a real man. Whoa, because you're enforcing gender rules. Like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, yeah, if that's
Right,
the
so
way you
you
get him to
agree that-
stop,
so you
100%.
you agree.
But I'm saying we
So
can
you
go
do
way
agree
past
that there is a
because-
level in which a men are going to inhabit the gender role of men that is ascribed by society, and that we ought enforce
Sure, but
that
okay,
gender
now
role.
I say, hey, you know what? Real men sex traffic. Andrew Tate, he's a real man. He's doing a great job sex trafficking all those women. Okay, now we're
Wait, didn't
enforcing
you
the
say
gender
earl-
role.
wait, hold on.
But some
Remember
gender roles are
earlier
going to be
saying
utility maximizing, some aren't.
The
That's
word
not
man
a-
is a form of
Sorry, Fabian.
manipulating people into doing things that you like, and now you're saying that men's have. It's. What are your
This
preferences?
is a hypothetical of things that are bad. Actually, I'm saying it would be bad if
Yeah,
we
I
did
know.
this,
I'm
but
just
people
saying,
do
like-
this. Okay, yeah. So if we're all like, oh, Andrew Tate, he's a real man. He's muscular. He wears sunglasses inside like a dipshit. Like,
Right.
oh well, and he sex
But this
trafficks
is
women. Like,
right. So this is a distinction that you're making without recognizing that you're making the distinction. And the distinction that you're making is that insofar as the gender roles inhabit the things that I believe to be virtuous, we ought enforce said gender roles. That is not the same thing as we ought not enforce gender roles. Your previous statement that we shouldn't shame people for not adhering to gender roles is not the same thing as I don't think we should shame people for these things because I don't think that they hold the value that
if I accept that we are going to
gender
have
role.
gender rules forever, and we have to make them good, then yeah, I think we should enforce them, obviously. But like this is what I'm saying is like the concept of making these gendered and telling people you're a male, you have to do this, you're a female, you have to do this is the bad thing.
I think
But
we
if
all
we
agree.
have the utility of using it to make Andrew Tate stop beating people, yeah, then we should tell him he's not a real man. But
I
like,
think
what's the point?
Everyone here would agree that there are traits that the current zeitgeist in the Western Hemisphere, right, see as manliness that is bad, and we should do
Jesus
it.
Christ, global north, you fucking bigot.
Whatever. Okay. Anything like I don't think
Anglosphere,
there's
damn it.
anyone here that would say that the societal view of men is perfect and all virtuous. It's not. Obviously, there are things
No, I'll
that
give you
people
that.
think,
Yeah, that wasn't my point.
right? The thing that there are things that people think of as being manly that we should probably move away from. But my own argument here is that there is a good to having a virtuous expectation that we uphold and enforce in society, right?
It's very conservative of you, Wick.
Through society. It's just true.
Can I check really quick? Because this is, I think, one of the speed gaps that is a bit upsetting. Is that I think that when you say that something is what men ought to be, it's being presumed by SoyPill at least, and maybe some other people. You mentioned people in the chat that means that other people should not aspire to that thing. And I'm not saying
it
that.
must
I'm
mean
saying
that unless you're
have...
not doing it with a gender neutral term, right? Otherwise, why are you saying
but
it?
I'm addressing men. I'm addressing men. I'm not saying this is something that's only true for men and not other people. I'm saying if I'm going to have a conversation with men, I'm addressing men. I'm saying men as a group, because I think men were having some difficulty as an identity. I think that the male identity is fundamentally more in crisis more often than the female identity, for some reasons we can get to in a second. So I think that men need to be addressed more directly, more frequently, because part of the nature of our place in society is that it is more volatile. It changes more frequently than it does for women.
I would argue it doesn't change at all. I would argue the same expectation. Yeah, the same expectation.
I'm an idiot and I should kill myself.
No, but I'm gonna resurrect you. You're not going anywhere. You're gonna catch the smoke,
this
fam.
man
I'm sorry.
Has
the same standards of expectation to provide as a male has maintained itself despite the fact that women entered the workforce, fam. The same standard of which men should protect each other.
Bank accounts.
Yeah, but that's all of like 3% of the population. That's 3% of the population. That's not even a counter argument. The real thing is, as a male, you're still expected to be a provider. You're still expected to be a protector. You're still expected to be emotionally consistent.
What is the conversation?
The conversation is that the concept of being a man is etch-a-sketch, and it is attached to these expectations. Like they don't go away anywhere, right? It's the same thing. It's never changed.
That was the worst analogy you could use. Etch-a-sketch, and it's not changing.
You're right. I'm sorry. You're right. It's engraved.
Because men have more utility. They have, there's a greater diversity of presentations for which men can be that is useful and valuable. Men have greater utility is such a loaded statement, buddy. Like, hey, who gives birth to literally everyone? It's fucking women. Like, it depends on what we're fucking valuing. That's like such a ridiculous thing to say.
That's a good point, but we are talking about what it means to be a man. What
let me try this. Let me try this. Gang, this is a failure.
Y chromosomes, for crying out loud. Like, we experiment with males in society. That is what he's saying, right? Is that there's variability hypothesis, right? And so because men tend to be more variable in intelligence, in height, in personality, etc., that it is more the gender role that is associated with the more variable gender genetically is more likely to change over time. Jesus Christ, I feel like I'm in sociology 101 class trying to talk to
it doesn't.
You just keep saying it.
The counter argument is it's literally what you said at the top.
The counter argument is you just think your words are magical.
When you brought up the example of the fact that you would be the one expected to protect your girlfriend, that expectation in male has never changed.
Not talking about expectation.
Never changed.
You didn't listen. You changed words in your brain.
What word would you prefer?
You translate
what word would you prefer? By all means, go ahead. Because it still didn't change.
I'm saying that I would do it.
The role never changed.
I think I should do it. I think it's better to have a culture. Okay. And I'm not saying
everyone does.
Matriarchal societies have existed, you dumb fuck. They just die out because it's dysfunctional. When you assign that role to women, the fucking culture doesn't survive.
It's not that it's war. It's not good at surviving. It's evolutionarily disbeneficial.
It's dysgenic. It's dysfunctional. It doesn't work.
So if it's evolutionary,
everyone. Oh my God, I'm going to go insane. The ICC is going to bring me up on charges for what I'm about to do. Okay, right? Like if you guys keep going, right? Like they're gonna start painting murals of all of you in New York City after what's gonna go. There's gonna be riots, right? They're gonna have whole political discourses on this of like what did Wick do and why did he do it? Wick supremacy is gonna be the FBI's most
Wick power,
like dangerous thing that has ever existed in America. Okay, enough. We can all agree, I hope, maybe not. Oh my God. I'm scared to even ask. Men are struggling.
Well, the funny
in
thing
America.
is, I actually disagree. Sorry,
Ah!
Xerxes. I was thinking of to
Men
the
are-
future.
Men are struggling in America right now, I think, in a way that
Obviously.
is unique, right? I think that men
Can I explain
lack
why?
identity.
Can I explain
And
why?
I think that
Oh my God, run.
It's not a super meaningful statement to me.
Go ahead.
okay, men lack identity and they lack the ability to know how to act and how they are expected to act. Some of that,
was my opening statement.
right? I know, but I'm focusing
But no one
in on
said you
this.
were wrong. No one said you were wrong.
Okay, please stop. Okay.
Sorry. Wait.
So, what I'm trying to focus in on, right, is why that's occurring and how we can fix it. Because does anyone think it's okay that the state of men is good in America?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what you mean by that.
No.
No.
Wait,
No,
I want to talk. I want to
think
talk
it's
about
better
why
than
it's
people
happening.
realize. I think okay, so I've argued this a couple of times, but I think that the crisis of male identity is fundamental. It is creative. It is like necessary, because as we have an constantly evolving, constantly changing world, especially one that's like technologically advanced and is constantly advancing at an exponential rate, men have to constantly reinvent themselves. That is actually the thing that men are supposed to be doing. They are supposed to be constantly addressing the little holes in the market, whether or not that is a financial market, whether or not that is just like the types of labor or the types of people that should exist. It's the reason we're constantly looking for new like ways of being male. This is good maleness. This is a sigma. This is an alpha. The reason we keep doing this is because the standards are changing. It's a thing that's supposed to be in flux. You're not supposed to have a stable identity. You're supposed to have a constantly evolving, reiterating, fixing itself, breaking itself, testing new things identity. That's what a man is supposed to be.
I think that there are some
Stable might be the
there
wrong
are
word for that,
things,
but I get what you're saying.
right? There are things on the edges, right? That fair enough. There can be flux, right? There could be some flux. There could be some flexibility. I think that's fine. How men dress, for example, the fashions they wear, how they present, their mannerisms, fair enough. But when we call to what I tried to talk about in the previous segment, the core, what the foundational essences of providing, protecting, training, and sacrifice at the end of the day. I think those four kind of pillars. Without those four pillars, we are seeing what we have today, and we are seeing charlatans come in and try to fill the void that the lack of those pillars are leaving. Andrew Tate is a great example. Okay, Andrew Tate is attempting to exploit a vulnerability in our system for good and bad reasons, for virtuous and banal reasons, but banal reasons both. We've eroded the pillars of what it means to be man. Okay, and that has left us with an open wound, and we have a virus.
Wick, I can't
Many
believe I
viruses.
have to, but I'm going to disagree with you again. All right.
Why?
So there's a reason we have a crisis of masculinity. I actually kind of agree with ToonKritic when he says it's good that they're kind of just having to rediscover themselves. But the reason that's happening is not because we've eroded pillars. The reason it's happening is, and I have this analogy, which I think Base will appreciate because I watch some of your videos. You watch a lot of anime, right? Women have been in the Dragon Ball Z hyperbolic time chamber for like 5,000 generations.
Thank you for the
right?
raid, Confluent.
Right?
Appreciate you. Go ahead.
Right. So they are getting socialized and on the motion. They know how to dress. They know how to interact with each other. And for years and years and years and years, men filled this very exclusive, very exclusive gendered thing where I'm the provider, I'm the breadwinner, I'm the independent one, and that's all you had to do. And now all of a sudden, now women can do that too. So men don't have socialization. Men don't have outlets. Men don't have good emotional regulation. So women just have this huge advantage. And they have problems, right? Like there are problems that every woman is going to go through. They just strive to be a better person. But men are now generations behind on all of that. So they're struggling to find purpose when they realized, hey, the thing that everyone told me was the thing that was going to make me a man is not enough anymore.
That isn't nothing. I don't.
Well, I can add one thing to
Hold
that.
on, if I may. And I'll let you go after me. And I see you too, Chip. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with that. That is also a factor. However, that factor also erodes those pillars, like I talked about, right? Like the ability to protect, the ability to spend resources to help, right? You
Yeah, but
no longer are
who's
able
telling
to
people
do
they
that,
shouldn't do that? Who's telling
right?
people don't protect anyone? Who's telling people,
Well,
There are a
oh,
lot
are
of
some
people.
feminists. There
I
are
have met
feminists.
women, right? Who's
I
okay.
haven't.
I have met women, and Stardust has said this. Stardust says, like, if if a burglar breaks in the house and you don't let me fight him, I'm going to be mad at you, right? Like, if you don't let me also get in that fight. And I think that, men should protect the person who is weaker in the situation. And I've met Stardust, and she's great, but I'm stronger than her, frankly. Okay,
Yeah.
right? Like, so
Okay, yeah, I think
does that
that's a
make
very
sense?
niche thing, Wick. Like, how many people are
No,
saying,
there's a lot of
let me
women
fight
who
the
say, "Do not
burglar, let
protect
me
us."
fight the burglar. Like, what the
There's
fuck?
a lot of
I
women who
think-
say,
I
"Do not
think-
protect us."
Well,
there are.
I guess a lot of
There
women are
are,
stupid,
yeah.
but not all
There's
of
a
them.
lot, yeah. They're feminists. You know what I mean? No, to kind of add though to your point though, I'm sorry, because I think you're right. I think you laid the groundwork pretty well. The addendum to that is the fact that as a male, it is very difficult to have that relationship, even sometimes with other males, but particularly with women, to express provision, protection, and emotional regulability. Right? We're going to use that term because a lot of those things are in relation to having relationships with women. You don't provide for other males, right? And most of and again, back to you, Tuna Chip, you highlighted that the expectation for you as a male is to protect the female. You didn't highlight it was to protect anyone, it was to protect the female. This is actually very consistent and to my point, right? So in an environment where it's difficult to enter a relationship with a woman, where you're supposed to do those things, you cannot express in and of itself what it means to be a man. So I actually do understand what you're saying. So I agree that oftentimes this is used as an emotional tool. I think where we would disagree and for further conversation would be, can we make it a tool for good, and can we make it a virtuous tool?
I want to get Tuna Chip in here, and Nonfon's been waiting forever, and I see you too, Fabian. So yeah.
Running around the
Yeah,
circle. How do you shore that up, SoyPill? How do you shore that up with the don't talk about men bit? Because you're saying this like men are behind women, and women are a community that have gotten ahead by saying this is what women should be. We're talking about girls. We're talking about different female identities. They've gotten to where they are. The hyperbolic pressure chamber is having an intra-gender conversation about like aspirational potential.
Just
like
housekeeping issue. I'll be right back. Tuna, you're in charge till I'm back.
he has to shit his
All
pants.
right, everybody,
So, like,
it's slur time.
No, you can't hurt his
Let's
channel
go.
like that.
what's your response?
I'm also
My response to
streaming
that
Jesus.
is you don't need to
So am I.
address men specifically. Like, yeah, I am, by saying, oh, men are behind because of this specific gendered language, we need to bring men up, but we don't exclusively need to bring men up. If we're raising children to be virtuous, to be breadwinners, to be independent, to be all these things that we used to say were masculine, if we're raising children to be emotionally intelligent, that's a good thing, and I think we should prefer to do that in a way that is not gender
But
exclusive.
the men are behind. So the men are behind in the
Okay.
same way that there's special education, and in the same way that there are, financial distributions of resources to people based on need. Do you not think that you have it inbuilt, which is that you have a theory that the gendered language is holding people back, and I kind of understand what you're saying, although I think it's for a different reason.
It's literally
I
the
think
reason that men are behind is because we told men, hey, if you cry, you're a little bitch, right? Don't show your emotion. Don't talk
you're
about
missing-
it.
Hold
you're
on, can
At
you
the
be more
very least,
specific
it's the lack
than
of
just
ability
men
to
are
express
behind?
it.
I don't.
You're leaving stuff on the table. You're leaving stuff on the table. Masculinity and the conversations that males have with one another and themselves about what it means to be a man has become a cargo cult. It is mistaking result for principle. It is it is looking at what men have been and the results of their principles in previous times and assuming whatever produces that end is good. But like being a warlord is not valuable in a time of peace. Having the capacity to defend people is valuable, but you're not supposed to like be brutish and act right now. Like Wick was talking about going to college. I really hope you're not focusing on your social studies if you're in Ukraine right now. Like there are times when certain aspects of masculinity are like more important or less important to embody as both sexes. But if I'm going to have a conversation with men and I'm going to talk about the attunement to that thing, I'm going to say, stop focusing so much on this. Like, a real man doesn't like step back when somebody like challenges his authority. I would say, well, a real man assesses the moment and recognizes when violence is the solution or when you get the fuck out of there. Like, you
So
have to think of these
expressing
things like
temperance.
principle based, right?
Principle,
But
yeah, but
that's
again, you're begging the question. Then why are you saying a real man is the thing when I say it's good, whatever I want a real man to be?
I don't say
You don't
real
have to
man.
use it that way. You literally
I don't
just
say
said
real
that.
man because I fundamentally think that identifying by your gender is like subordinate. I think that is like that is lower than the consciousness we're capable of. I think you should be an ubermensch. I think all human beings should be more than man. They should be acknowledging the thing that humans have that other animals don't have. They should be acknowledging the things. If you're a man by gender or
Like I
sex,
said
you
in
should
my
be
intro.
acknowledging the things that you have that women don't have. You should be acknowledging the things that we have that like natural forces don't have. Like you have to actualize your potential unique
Did he
to
let
you.
anyone else talk while I was gone?
Yeah, for sure.
He
No,
went
he's
back
having a
for
back and forth.
SoyPill.
He kept threatening everyone with the box cutter, so we all shut up.
Do you not fidget with like a knife every once in a while?
No.
No, I think
You're not a
he's
Not a
real
real
man.
man.
No, man.
he's just busting your chops. He doesn't like. I'm sure
I
he
know.
doesn't mean
I'm
it.
I'm doing some let's pull the curtain. I'm doing some interplay too. But to get back on it, so Wick, if you weren't able to hear while you're away, I think you probably were. You have wireless headphones. I'm asking him how he shores up this idea of conversation. Like
Gross.
what?
He has wired headphones. I said gross.
Oh, you have wired headphones?
I know.
That's a failure on your quality of life.
It's what it is.
The question is like, okay, so if women are ahead and women are the type are the sex that's been having a conversation about like what it means to be a woman, and they've been having it quite intensively, why shouldn't men be having that same conversation about themselves? And you can go ahead and pick up what your response was.
Yeah, my response was just that it doesn't. They don't have to have that gendered exclusive talk. Like, yeah, if that's the only way we can get men back up to speed, if that's the only way we can get them to talk to each other, to tell their best friend that they love them, to do all these great things that they're not doing because they're like, that's freaking gay, bro. Like, yeah, but my thesis is that you don't need to do this as a exclusively let's focus all our resources on men. If people just raise their kids to be good, well-mannered, wide-horizoned people, you can do this without being like, oh, you're not a real guy, or hey, you need to be more womanly. It's just, hey, maybe don't be a fucking dick. Maybe tell your friend you love them. Give them a hug. Talk to your friends about your emotions. Don't bottle that shit up. You can go to the gym. You can be independent. Like, these are all things that we should just be teaching fucking everyone. And the idea that, oh, well, because men are behind, we can only exclusively focus on men to get them up to speed is just not something I think is viable.
Men and women experience the same things, or let me say it this way. The way you are treated as a man, whether it's good or bad, whether we should or should not have happened, is different than the way you're treated as a woman. And so, yes, we do need specific training, if you want to call it that, towards men to respond to the specific ways that they are treated that women generally aren't, and vice versa. That's why next week, same day, I'm going to have Erudite on, I'm going to have Julie on, I'm going to have a few others on, and women, and they're going to talk about the same topic, but with women, right? Because there are different experiences and different amounts of experience that they have that's just not the same in general, right? Like,
Yeah, I would even argue something pretty interesting is that I actually don't even think that women have this code of conduct that we're kind of brushing against to begin with. I do think that it is uniquely masculine to focus on the code of conduct and how you're supposed to operate in society and in relation particularly to women, because like I was saying earlier, again, the ideals and expectations that as a man, and even listen to the way I say it, as a man I'm supposed to protect, provide, and be emotionally stable, is something that, again, that, I mean, even just the nature of this conversation, like I've had this conversation for years on and off with just friends and internet comments and all of that. There is something to being a man, right? Or there's something about being a male where there is some code of conduct and some way to be as, right? It just kind of sounds lofty, but
well, do you disagree
so
with that, SoyPill? Right?
and that's the thing, right? And so that's, I think what Tuna and Fabian, if I can understand, what they're trying to get Soy to get to is that reality exists. Like we have that, right? Like, and I think earlier they were trying to explain the why we have that, but I think we can move past to the fact that we do have it. Here's the thing, and this is why I peter between agreeing and disagreeing with Soy. Because when we do highlight the fact that there is some way to be a man, we do kind of lose out on the fact that as a human being, there should be a way we should operate in society. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, as a male, there is a lot of expectations and a lot of codes that we're supposed to adhere to. Like even rising to the occasion to fight is actually another one, which, by the way, Wick, is something you encountered, right? When you're on Twitter. Rising to the occasion to be ready to fight is another thing about being a male, right?
Here,
The
and I'll
thing
tell you,
is-
I'll tell you another difference that's going to happen. And I'm a prophet, and you guys can clip this and you can check next week.
Mhm.
Chat, the same joke. They've been making the same joke. I've seen tons of them.
Mhm.
Well, why don't you have any men on the men panel? Ha ha ha. They're not
But
going to
ex-
say
but
that on
see-
the women panel. They're not.
Exactly, right? But that's the thing, right? So this exists, right? I think that there's a utility to this existing, but to what Soy Boy, if I'm correct, I'll hand
But
it off
another
to you.
difference is
Are you saying
We're-
that?
none of
we're
the,
just-
no, hold on.
because
Another
we
difference.
focus
Another
on it,
difference.
when
Another
you say
difference
that-
is another difference
but-
is another
because
difference
we
is
focus,
Open it up.
no one's going to ask you guys for your OnlyFans, and that's going to be another difference, right? So there are
Ooh, that's
differences.
where you're wrong, Wick.
Can I just
Well,
say
now they
something?
are,
Because this
right?
conversation is going
Hold
in
on.
circles. It's
Hold
been
on,
going
hold
in
on.
circles for a while. We've been talking
Yeah,
about
but because I think you're not addressing
you
Soy.
talk.
You're not addressing the
talk.
core
That's
of what
why.
Soy is saying, right?
I'm willing to say it.
And
I'll
at
say
the
it.
core
It's
of
going
what
in circles
Soy
because
is
you
saying,
talk.
whatever. Whatever. Anyway, the point is, we do miss out on what it means to like just generally be pleasant in society when we're only focusing on what males are supposed to do.
Fabian,
I think
take
that's
it away.
pretty important.
Take it away.
Okay, so
Now you're going to explain why
actually-
we do that.
my guy, please just listen. All right, so in regards to the question that you were trying to get answered before we kind of like kept going over the same things, right? Which is like, why is there this crisis? Like, where is this crisis coming from? And I believe it was SoyPill who brought up a common like issue here, which is like women entering the labor market, women being more successful in terms of like undergraduate degrees, women being more successful before they have children in terms of pay.
Women are the problem,
right? So like if and there's this gender role about provider. I agree that that's an element. I think we would be remiss if we didn't kind of talk about the elephant in the room as well, to a certain degree, which is the hypergamy that has been exacerbated in sexual relationships with young men, insofar as social media and dating apps have created a space where for millennia, right, you had small communities that started getting bigger as civilization grew, but primarily young men would pair with even structured in society with people in a relatively small dating pool, and that this is become like it's like when you look at the data, it's affecting women as well. But I mean, you have something like 40% of Gen Z that are like, yeah, I haven't like been with or been in a relationship in a year, right? Which is drastically lower than millennials, which is also lower than Gen X in that same period of time. But I think there is an even bigger issue than kind of all of those things as it relates to gender roles. And what I think what's occurring is that we have defanged the cultural institutions that enforced gender roles, and yet we still have vestiges of those same gender roles at the interpersonal level. And there is a conflict that is occurring here that I think is really damaging, because gender roles give you the guardrails as a man or a woman on like how you ought act, what you ought strive for, how you ought be, these same virtues that we were, kept getting brought up, right? And at the same time, we have men who police each other, boys who police each other. You have, dads, if they are involved, who kind of instill those same vestiges of those gender roles. But we don't have like a Catholic church that's predominant in the community. We don't have a government that is like, very much, attempting to enforce these things. Instead, what we have is an academic structure, an education structure, a media structure that is, believes heavily in toxic masculinity, that believes that masculine, gender roles are problematic, and enforces that. And so there's this divide occurring where it's almost worse than if no gender role existed, is that internally there is, the older gender roles that are present within a lot of men, and then externally there's a combat against that very thing. And so it creates this own kind of cognitive dissonance between the male's ability to act out in the world and in the
I think you're only right
and
if
in
you don't
society.
know how adjectives work, and that toxic masculinity is a completely separate thing from masculinity. And if you
God.
can't differentiate those two things, then I
my
guess
You
it
know how
creates
people
cognitive
think? Do you know
dissonance.
what
Well, no, I
emotions
actually
are?
already
Do you know
addressed
what
this.
Yeah, I
children-
agree. People are stupid. Like, they don't I'll acknowledge that these things
Okay,
are different.
young
No, but
boys
we
are
already addressed
stupid.
this.
You have
Oh,
to acknowledge that they're stupid
Shut up.
and then talk to them like they're
Shut up.
stupid,
Shut up.
aka
Shut
handhold
up.
them.
Shut up.
Fucking
All of
Christ.
you. I am going to commit a war crime.
But we did already address
You're the
this.
most
actually.
masculine
No,
thing that
you
happened in this
stop
fucking
too.
panel.
You stop too. All of you
Jesus
stop.
Christ.
Women can commit war crimes.
Fucking retards.
Non-Fawn. Non-Fawn,
Sure.
please save us.
I'm talking
What
to
do
fucking
you-
children.
Please save us. What I want to know, right? And what I want to talk about, because I think Fabian did say something good there that I wish people would have hopped on and been like, oh, that's good. We should go with that. Let's go down that thread. But instead, we're circling back. Let me get to it, right? And I'm going to give Nonfon first crack at this because, again, Nonfon, you're being so good today.
A good boy,
Gets
a good
rewarded.
man,
Gets treats.
is very
Yeah.
quiet
Boy.
and polite and patient.
It's virtuous, even.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I think that Fabian is correct that the institutional structures that enforced a lot of these gender norms have been defanged. I think that's a good term for it. But I would go further than that. I think that it is become you go to, and I'll say it this way. If you want to ascribe to the traditional male gender roles, the traditional manhood, you are in many cases going to come into conflict with the existing institutions. You go to war with society in a real way. And I think that is creating a conflict dynamic that is very unhealthy.
Could you give
because
one example of that conflict?
Yes, I can. So for one example of that would be like, I want to be someone who is the breadwinner. I want to provide for my family, right? In many cases, you're seen as, in some cases, abusive. Like, whoa, you want to be the breadwinner? You aren't going to let a woman go and enter the workforce? You're going to force her to stay home barefoot and pregnant, which isn't what you're doing, by the way, but it's just you want to be the one who makes some money.
I mean, if you want to be
Well,
the
it's even worse
exclusive
than that.
breadwinner, that is literally what you're doing.
But-
Otherwise,
Yeah, you
you're
shouldn't
just
be
saying,
able to-
I want
you
to make
shouldn't
the
be able
most
to-
money, which is fine,
Mhm.
and no one's going to say that's bad. So
But
I don't
again,
understand.
the worst
That's not
part to
conflicting
that
at all.
is that
It's
like it cannot be
Is your debate
expressed.
tactic just to aggressively misunderstand? It seems like
Well, it's
Explain
more
it to me. I'll be
like
quiet.
that's all you're doing.
Explain it to me. Go ahead, Fabian. Explain it to
Jesus
me.
Christ.
Explain it to me.
So let's talk about something that's traditional role, right? Now, yes, Wick tried to go a little, I think, soft on it by saying the primary breadwinner, right? But if you were to, let's say, engage in what women now call financial abuse and say, I'm the breadwinner, I expect my wife or my partner, whatever the fuck term you want to use, right, to stay home and cook and clean. And that means that I have expectations when I come home that these things are done because I'm fulfilling my role and you're fulfilling that role. That is something that internally a lot of men would see as positive. That growing up, they would have been raised that that's a good thing, that you are doing what is good as a man. And then at the same time, TV, academic institutions, media, the many other cultural, institutions that are telling you would say that that's abusive, that that's domineering and
Okay,
wrong.
cool. So I didn't
But
misunderstand. It sounds like
realistically-
you misunderstood me, which is, if you want to do that, that is totally fine. If a woman says, you know what, I want to sit at home and take care of my kids, and I don't want to develop a career, I just want to be nurturing, that's 100% fine.
Women
And
can
if people
also
are
play their
criticizing you,
expectations.
if
Yes.
people are criticizing you for locking someone into that, it's not because, you're not allowed to have a housewife, you're not allowed to be the primary breadwinner. It's because if you're enforcing that on someone, saying, no, you can't go get a job.
We're discussing the fact that there is conflict in the point that I made, that
But
you
we're not
like
really
hopped
addressing
on
who's
one
causing
word
the
to aggressively
conflict.
misunderstand, right? Like there is a conflict between the old guard of gender roles that are still instantiated in interpersonal relationships against men, and the
but who's
institutions
starting
that
the
have a
conflict,
different
though?
values. Oh
Yeah.
my fucking God. It's like,
But who are the people that are actually combating males' ability to be that role?
He said multiple times. He's listed institutions that are going against it.
Okay, so it's not institutions.
it's just-
it's women. It's the
again,
ability
oh my
to
God.
be in
it's
relationships with
aggressively
women.
misunderstanding.
Because you cannot express this gender role in absence of women. This is what causes so much pain for young men and why they're so lost.
We're gonna get
We have
another rant where you say
connected the
literally
gender
fucking
roles-
nothing and don't
where
address
you
the point.
it's literally fuck. I am addressing the point. We already went over this, right? It's not just this huge institution things and people are going to be mean to you in society and someone will write a video essay. It's that on the person to person getting into a relationship to express the gender roles you're saying, for a lot of young men, it cannot be done. This is what's creating the Lost Boys, the Lost Ark that
Dude, I
you
have
guys keep on
tried to
talking
fucking,
about.
from the beginning of this goddamn panel, explain to you Sociology 101. If
But
you
he
cannot
didn't ask. We
understand
never asked
that
for you
there
to
is
do
a
that.
fucking
You didn't
difference
ask.
between interpersonal relationships
Let me read the super chats.
and
I'm
cultural
getting paid
institutions,
money.
then please just fucking don't ever come to another
$2.
discussion of
That's not what
politics or
Wick asked.
culture
Let
again.
me make
But
my
that's
This
not
is
money.
what Wick
kindergarten
asked for.
shit.
That's
Let me
not
make
what
my
Wick
money.
asked for.
Let me get through these super chats. I gotta get to these super chats. $2 from Testicle Johnson. Me, good man. Happy all time. Go PP standing up. Thank you. Zephyr Hash for $5. What I learned: being a man is the same as acting good in society, which is the same as being a good human. There's a certain way to act, and there's a reality. Thank you for $5. $10. Psychonaut. Fabian, everything you said, Xerxes has pointed out, and you and Tuna jumped down his throat. And then $2 more from Tessie Johnson. Xerxes was 100% correct on everything. Thank you for the bits on YouTube. Thank you for the gift subs. Thank you for the resubs, bonging stuff, things like that. I really appreciate you. Yeah. Okay. Well, do you disagree? There's a fundamental tension in some of these things between what society expects.
No,
and
there
what
actually
was
isn't. There
traditional.
isn't. No, I'm not saying there's not a disagreement. I don't disagree, right? So, like, if someone were to say, "Hey, I just met you on a dating app. Let's go on a date. I'm dating for marriage, and by the way, my expectation is like I never want you to have a career." If you establish that right away, and they're on board and they're consenting to that, cool. All right, let's go into that expectation. Let's do it. The problem is that if you're setting out and telling people, "Hey, like, let's push this as a thing that you should be doing," and now we're locking women into these places where if anything goes wrong with their marriage, they've now spent 20 years not doing jack shit, and we also want this equality in the marriage court so they don't actually get more money when they don't have a career and don't have any jumping off point if they get divorced. That's where the financial abuse comes in. That's where people are saying, hey, don't do this. So if the whole argument from Tuna and Fabian is, hey, people are fucking stupid and we have to cater to them like the little baby drooling idiots that they are and say, hey, I just want to let you know that it's okay to want these things, just be careful. Yeah, sure. Great, let's do that.
Let me ask you this.
No, you just can't
No,
tell the
stop.
difference
Let me
between an
ask
is and an
SoyPill a
ought.
question.
It's
Can I ask?
fucking, oh my
Can I
God.
ask
I
SoyPill a
promise
question?
you I can.
SoyPill, I want to go down.
You're displaying that you can't.
I want to try something. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing or a neutral thing that in our society currently we value and promote monogamy?
Generally, it's probably a good thing.
Yes, generally it's a good thing. It's a general good for society that we are monogamous in most cases, right? And we promote monogamy, we reinforce monogamy, we see cheating and having multiple spouses and multiple girlfriends or boyfriends or something. We tend to look down upon that, right? People tend to look down upon that. And that probably is a healthy thing for our society, yes?
Yeah, if we're talking about retaining family structures and raising people correct. Yeah, sure. Okay. What's your point, though?
So, my point is that society can and should have and create societal expectations for how relationships go, even if there are outliers where people would consent to different things, right? So
okay.
I
So if the
forbid,
expectation is, hey, let's
right?
not lock yourself out of a career for 20 years and then worst case scenario, you're fucked, I think that should probably be promoted, even though I think it's okay to have a trad wife stay-at-home person, right?
So the problem, I think, is that society, at least now, currently, and institutions have, again, framed it as you have, that you're locking women out and that they can't do this and that is an inherent negative thing. Even the way you talk about it is inherently negative. It's society has decided that this framework is inherently negative.
I'm not
However,
saying
it
it's
goes into-
inherently negative. I'm saying if we're going to start equalizing things like payouts in divorce court, which traditionally have favored women because women couldn't work after they got divorced, then yeah, we have to start talking about, well, this is no longer going to be benefiting you. And if we're going to lock you out of a job, that maybe we should go back to the way it was where it favored you in the divorce court. That's all I'm saying. It's not inherently bad.
SoyPill, can I try something?
Please.
Okay. Pick a young boy in your life that you love and you want them to have the best possible life. Just like imagine them for a bit. I'm just gonna give them like a random.
Imagining a young boy. I don't like where this is going.
That's all coming from your brain, buddy. So if you imagine that boy and you're sitting down and you're having a man to boy conversation, and you were trying to tell him what is in his best interest, or if you were to give him advice on how to live, and you were to take all of the things that you would give and put that into like a bucket, and just think of that as like a group of principles. Why would you not feel comfortable universalizing that as a principle that you would extend to all men?
Because I'd give the exact same conversation to my daughter or my son or whoever the fuck, because it doesn't matter.
Okay, sure. So you because you're not giving it to everybody, you feel like it's not fair to give good advice to only one of the sexes?
No, that's not what I said. I said if I'm going to give really good advice to someone I'm trying to mentor, I'm not going to exclusively gender it because I think that's harmful.
Okay.
Because if they don't embody a certain thing,
I get what he's saying. And I want to ask a question on that because
Can I follow up with the most obvious thing here though? Is that you're being more exclusive when you only give it to one person.
Yes, but he's saying he's not
yeah,
giving.
but I'm saying I'm going to give it to everyone, so I'm not going to do that.
That's not what he's saying.
He's saying he would give the exact same advice to a young girl,
a young woman as they would a young man. And
I don't know how.
Yeah, I think that
I don't know why you would fucking do that.
Yeah,
and think
because
that
there
that
are
makes sense, but
there are
fair
going
enough.
to be experiences that young men face that young women face
Of course,
less.
I'm not saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna tell a young man, hey, don't wear a dress when you walk around and go to the frat party. Like, obviously, I'm gonna tell different people that, hey, I don't think that we should have gender roles, but gender roles exist. People treat gender differently, and the same way, like,
I'm gonna bet some money here. I'm gonna bet $5. Okay, it's not a lot of money. I don't have a lot of money. Okay, I'm gonna bet $5 that you're going to if you talk about dating with a young man, you're gonna talk about it differently than you do with a young woman. You're going to bring things up with the young man that you
everything
wouldn't with
that
a
I
young
would say
woman, and
differently
vice
is going to be
versa.
exclusively how people are going to treat them because of who they are, and not how they should act.
Yes. You're getting it.
Okay. I promise you, you're not having a revelation. You just didn't know that I do this.
Because you acknowledge that society treats, and people in the society are going to treat each one differently. So we ought discuss different ways and stress different values and different things in different levels because there are different expectations and different ways they are treated, right? Absolutely, yes. So an example, like if I'm talking to a young woman about dating and things like that, I'm going to be like, you got to make sure that you cover your drink at these parties, right? You got to make sure that you what you're looking for is someone who's not going to take advantage of you, who's not going to do X, Y, and Z. Someone that's
Pano's literally just been teaching is-ought distinctions, and it's fucking it's literally like it's blowing my mind that we can't even have like a fucking adult conversation about this.
We can. I don't know why you're wigging out. I'll be honest with you. I'm a bit befuddled by it.
Because you're retarded. That's why I'm wigging out.
I guess
it's
so.
Frustratingly so.
Maybe you're the retarded person for trying to have a different conversation than the rest of us. I don't know.
Xerxes, can I?
This is true.
Okay. I've been a little
my turn to be a
retard. Like I want to address it directly. You have an ideal other that you think men should be beholden to, and you're so firm on it that when you have this conversation and a person has a different ideal other or believes that instead of having an ideal other, a person should center themselves, that the conversation like falls apart because you're gonna like get into disagreements that are like rooted in that. So what we're saying is some of us are being descriptive, or all of us are sometimes talking about descriptive things, and some of us are in the same exchange being prescriptive. So like if we're gonna have a conversation about what men are, men are dealing with a different set of situations than women. The bridged gap is, what do we do differently because of that? Instead of looking at that at all, SoyPill is saying this is what we ought to do, and it should not be reliant on what is now. It should be thinking about the future. It should be all these ideal things. And I think we're trying to get through to this point of, instead of having this like wild aspirational prospect, you have to think about how you're going to get to the conditions where that ideal is even possible. And at least the two of us agree that the way to get there is by having an intra-sex conversation about virtue that catches men up to women. And I think that that's what we're trying to do.
If you are under the misconception that I think we shouldn't talk to men about how they're behind, or we shouldn't talk, and we should just ignore gender, I'm abolishing all gender. Hey, don't have these conversations with men because even though they are different, it's in the same way. It's like, okay, yeah, I think we should treat everyone of the same race the same, but I'm not going to pretend like we shouldn't tell like my beautiful mixed race babies, hey, hey, people are going to treat you fucking differently. Cops are going to treat you fucking differently. Obviously, I don't know why you don't think I think this. I know the distinction. Yes, there is a reality of gendered things. Yes, we have to tell people certain different things because the way that they're treated is the current reality of society. I'm just saying it would be best, and you're saying this is idealistic, but I promise you, if you just give good advice to your children in a gender-neutral way, you don't have to enforce that gender role. And yeah, you can acknowledge, oh, you might be treated differently because you're a woman. Oh, hey, you're less strong than the boys you're going to be around. Be a little more careful. That's fine. That just doesn't mean that you have to enforce that as a gender role, and we should try to do away with that. That's all I'm saying. Because that's what a gender role is. It's an enforcement of behavior and a shaming if you get away from it. That's the whole point.
Even if it isn't, explicit, he's right. Implicitly, if you're trying to date a woman and she desires you to be a provider, it is implicit in that relationship how you're supposed to act. So he has a good point there. There is some pressure applied to you.
Okay, but pressure is not enforcement. This is this like really cucked thing where you're saying, well,
if you
that
want to be with a woman,
something of you, and you want something from them, that you can't merely look at the cost benefit and just say no to the arrangement and not go along with what they're doing.
Yeah, of course you can. Well, yeah, of course you can. But the problem is, if you want something, you have to adhere to the way that the world is, right? So like, if I want to be in a relationship with a woman, I have to accept that there's no one disagreed with you. That if I want to get to X, which is to a woman, I have to behave in Y. Like no one has even begun to disagree with that. If I understand Soy, which you correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is predicating the behavior on being male makes you lose all of the other important parts about being a human. Would that be correct?
I can't believe I watched your videos going on. The fact that you were the one person who's trying to back me up here is amazing. But yeah, that is what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. How are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you. I'm just incredulous because I agree. I just agree with like everything you say in all your videos, and right now you're at least on the same level of understanding. But yeah, obviously I'm not.
Agree, right? Like
this is horseshoe theory in action. I swear to God.
It is.
I don't know. But, I might be more complex. I don't know.
I guess. Well, here's a good question.
It's the power of anime and friendship.
Again. You're talking to your buddy, right? He's struggling, right? Gotta give him a piece of it. He's like, man, I don't know what it. How do I be more of a man? What do you tell him? I'll give you an example to start us off. Like, I've a friend, right, who's been struggling in relationships and things like that, and he feels like he can't provide and things like that. You know what I tell him? I tell him like, hey man, you just need to like focus, right? Discipline, get in there, get more money. You need more money, get a better job. I don't say, well, no, you shouldn't worry.
Yeah, Wick, is your friend still struggling? Because I think I know why.
Well, I only gave him this advice last week. So yeah,
okay.
He is still struggling, right? But hey, we haven't had a long time. But yes, absolutely. Get a better job. You'll make more money. If you're having trouble because women don't like you because you don't have a job, get a job. Yes, absolutely. What would you say?
I think that's fair advice
Not
for getting.
fine. Go ahead.
I think that's fair advice for getting woman. I don't wanna just like say you need to do this in order to be like quote unquote a real man. But it's fine. It's fine if like
A man
he's
should
trying
have
to.
a job. Yes.
What about stay at home then? Should we not
Man,
promote that?
okay.
One half of being a man is being a human, and one half is being male. And if you're only addressing one half of those with your advice, then yeah, you're fucking up. But like, yeah, a human should actualize their potential. They should provide for themselves and others in their life. They shouldn't throw away value. That's a human thing. That's the universal between the two sexes. And then there's the question of what's the highest yield? What's the most efficient return? What are principles and what are expectations you should have and know that people have of you around that pursuit? And that's the sex part.
Sure. If you, and you know what, let's build a bridge here because maybe we agree on this. If you're saying exclusively the advice that we can say, what is a real man? It's to say, hey, there's a lot of societal expectations on you. There's a lot of societal assumptions about you, and you have to make sure that you're operating the best within those in the sense that, yeah, people are going to expect you to be more dangerous, and you should account for that. You shouldn't approach people at nighttime at 3 a.m. Don't sprint at woman to go say hi. Like, yeah, this is exclusively gendered language, and that is not. We're not going to tell women not to do that because they're the ones who have to run away from us. So yeah, okay, I agree with you. But I think that's kind of belaboring the point of if we're trying to say what is a real man, I'm saying, okay, yeah, we have to acknowledge the reality of what society has placed on us in the same way we acknowledge race and the same way we acknowledge every other socially constructed thing. It's not, just because I want it to be irrelevant doesn't mean it is. I'm just saying that, we can try to move away from that. So that's it.
Sure.
So this is, I guess I have to step back in, but it's so fucking frustrating. No, I as the only person here with any fucking ounce of conservative values, I guess, I would say that no, that there is something good and functional about it. When people say that something is socially constructed, right? It's kind of one of those magic words where we take in the context of how we hear it as opposed to what it actually means, right? So like, if something is socially constructed, for example, in gender, you could go back to the 1800s and look at fashion in men's fashion. And what you're going to find is you're going to find military uniforms and things of that nature where high heels are there, right? And it's like, well, it's because women value height. They've never not valued height. They've almost always valued height with relative few exceptions in cultures throughout the world. And so so high heels were a thing. But why were high heels also there was because of like the steppe people and people that rode horses. And it became like popular fashion within military fashion that then spread out largely because of like stirrups and saddles and utilizing that type of footwear. Well, that's not really a thing anymore because we have cars. And so and fashion has reversed it, right? It is women that are wearing high heels. Yeah, that portion is socially constructed, but the foundation there is that men and women absolutely are different. And that and you're not going to have a functional society that is even in Fantasyland in the end game where where we can get rid of all gender roles that doesn't have different expectations, different aspirational goals, and different values for different genders. And you throw the baby out with the bathwater if you notice that there are certain elements of our current instantiation of gender roles that are negative, where the answer then becomes, well, then we ought get rid of gendered roles and that we just ought give these virtuous things. Like, yeah, I'm an objectivist for the most part. I agree that like man, including woman, ought act within their own rational self-interest. But part of that rational self-interest is going to be, instantiating in your children, instantiating in your community values that are going to be different for men and women because they engage with the world differently. Saying that something is socially constructed doesn't mean that it doesn't have a basis in reality. It just means that the way that it expresses itself is going to be culturally dependent upon the times, the technology, the material conditions, etc.
Okay, you're going to hop on Xerxes for saying nothing, and then you just did that. But go ahead.
Thing. 20 second thing.
Every time I make a fucking point, like you seem incapable of actually.
It's almost like we disagree. You just make no, I wanted to. Wick interrupted me, but go ahead, Wick.
No. Okay, no, 20-second point. It's real simple. And then you can fight with Fabian if you want. Oh my God, you're making me forget. No, I got it. You want to be a better man? Okay, do 3 things. Get a job. Okay, work out, read books. If you do those 3 things, you will feel better, you'll be more healthy, and you'll
It's just
be
life
happy.
advice for everybody. It's like that's like
No, that's
True.
man
Yeah.
advice.
But wouldn't
That's
that-
gendered
wouldn't
man
that
advice.
but that would be Soy's point. So you do realize that, right, Fabian?
yes,
His point would
I absolutely
men
agree.
As long as
That's
you
why
get
I'm
it,
saying
right.
I'm
As long
saying
as you know
that's
what
general
he's
life
saying.
advice. Yeah, like as ToonKritic was trying to say earlier, and
But
as I
we
just said
should-
in my point, is that like yes, I agree. People ought to act within their own rational self-interest. It is within your own rational self-interest to be healthier.
There's
to
a reason
make more
I'm
money,
saying this,
to do those
though.
things. That's not the same
The-
thing
the
as
reason
the gender
I'm-
thing.
Saying this is because there are forces out there, there are people out there who say, well, men don't really need a job. Men don't really need to work out to still be a man. Men don't really need to do any of these things to be. No, you
Stop saying
do.
people. These are not people who are talking to you, saying these things.
Yeah, I have people in my real life, right? Say these things.
Twitter is not real life, Wick.
If you
It's a
think
Russian
Twitter
bots.
is not real life, you are wrong.
Dead internet,
Twitter-
buddy.
Twitter has influenced
Dead internet theory is
everything.
fucking
It
real,
can
bro.
I'm only
Continue
here because of Twitter.
to
You're right.
influence everything that we do. It influences our political.
Wait, Wick, do you work
process.
out?
It influences our economics. I run a little bit. And
He
I do some
exercises his
push-ups and
belt.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Is that working out?
Are you gonna take that from him? Oh my God, Wick! I think you should fight with Tuna right now.
Oh, me and
Okay,
Tuna-
Fabian, wait, I want to
We have
talk
a
to
good
Fabian
time.
because I was being mean, but unironically, like I'm not actually saying anything you just said was necessarily wrong. The stuff you're talking about, yeah, gender roles are constructed, they have value. You're probably kind of like boxing at shadows, and I'm not trying to be patronizing, but like there are a lot of leftists who'll come on and be like, well, actually, that's socially constructed. It doesn't matter. No, it absolutely matters. It probably stems from things of biology that are reality. But the problem I have with you saying that is, I guess, our fundamental disagreement is you value certain gender roles as, oh, like, yeah, this is inherent to men should do this. This is inherent to women should do this. And generally that might be true in certain cases, but I'm saying you don't need to do that. And I think society would be better if we don't try to enforce those things. That's all I'm really trying to get at. So
I wouldn't
It's
say
okay,
that I
the people who are
value.
saying
I
that
wouldn't say
Twitter
that I
isn't real
value.
life. If you want to know what's going to happen in real life in the next week or month, you go on Twitter and you look. And that will happen.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that I necessarily value these things. This is like a kind of a classic conservative, metaphor, right?
Misconception.
Which is like the left winger, finds when you find like God damn it, a fence in the middle of the road, right? And the left winger is like, well, there's a fence in the middle of the road that's like blocking us. We ought to get rid of this fence. And the conservative goes, well, who put the fence here? Why is the fence here? Before we start knocking down fences, we should maybe try and figure out why this fence was here, because the outcome of destroying this fence might be worse than we think, right? So there's a certain conservative disposition, at least from like a Burkean kind of perspective, right? Which is that like, you have to be careful if you're going to get rid of cultural kind of ideas and things that have lasted thousands of years, because you don't actually know what the downstream effect of getting rid of those things are. We can kind of surmise that there are certain things that we've seen over time be negative, and we can pick apart at some of those things. But when you say like, oh, the very concept of like having gender roles is anathema to like a healthy society, like that is
I'm not
that is
saying that.
an extreme. Well, you're
obviously
How
we
are you
have
not
better
saying that?
society. Well, because obviously society is functioning and to some capacity we've gotten better. Obviously through history we've had gender roles that are very wildly, but there's a lot of consistencies, right? I'm not going to say, oh, like this is the downfall of society, this is what's causing us all these problems. I'm saying we've accelerated to a point where we can move past these things that I think are causing harm, where enforcing masculinity is causing harm to men, and we can kind of move away from that. Now we could go to a good place in Tuna's world where we're like, let's exclusively focus on men. I'm not saying that could is going to have necessarily negative outcomes. It could also have positive outcomes.
You said
I'm not
something
saying
there.
it's-
Right,
I want to
but
ask
like
something.
history-
I want to ask him my goddamn
God
question.
damn it, dude.
SoyPill, you said that enforcing masculinity is what's destroying men. Do people agree with that?
I
Yes
think
Yes
you
and no.
could just-
See,
in a
I
different
think it's
way
more
said
complex
that I
than
didn't
that.
say that. But let me at least respond to what he's saying. You're right. Like
Wick, I'm gonna remember your question because I think it's
when
very
you are
interesting. Go ahead.
right, like when you say that like that we can recognize that gender roles as an entire category are and enforcing those gender roles as opposed to having, descript, non-binary, whatever fucking, gender neutral kind of virtues that we stress, and we can do away with this entire concept of gender roles. That is an extremely radical position, historically speaking, right? Like, we have to understand that, like, you can't look at human history in the same way that we look at the human lifespan, right? It is relative, like we have had relatively stable gender roles with some fluctuations throughout time in Western society up until the 1970s. And then you're like, okay, well, we've made progress in the last 50 years. We're not going to know what the downstream effects of let's say, having women being a large part of the workforce, or like egalitarianism and so many of these other things, for another 100 years. Like, these things these things happen over a span of multiple generations. And to say that we would be better off, I have to ask you, what evidence do you have that if we just abolished gender roles, if we could, right, and that we only taught virtue, that this would lead to a better, more prosperous society and get the desired outcomes that you prefer?
Okay, so this is like this weird appeal to, we've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of years, and there's no evidence to show that it would be good, so why are you proposing it? But I think you're misunderstanding what I'm proposing. I'm not saying, hey, let's ignore gender. I'm a gender abolitionist. There are no men, there are no women. Like, anyone can do anything. Like, obviously there are going to be differences. Obviously we have to acknowledge the history of it coming up to this. In the same way, I would never advocate for colorblindness, because that's just ignoring history. It's ahistorical. Like, that's not what I'm advocating for. What I'm saying is, when we enforce a gender role insofar as saying, hey, you're not a real person, you're not a real man, you're not a real woman unless you do this thing, that is bad. One, because it's arbitrary, and anyone can say that about anyone, like, hey, you're not a real man unless you do this, you're not a real man unless you do this, and suddenly it's this big fucking chaotic mess where everyone's arguing on what makes the best man, even though there's clearly not a fucking solid definition for this. I'm just saying, let's not make that gendered. I'm not saying you can't have the concept of housewife.
Can you give any? You only made one piece, which is that it's
my
arbitrary.
evidence is,
but it's not arbitrary.
And
it's based off of the functional society and the ones that failed and the ones that succeeded throughout human history. So it's not
do you
an
have
arbitrary
evidence
distinction.
that a non-gendered advised culture failed? Because I don't think those exist, right? Like, that's...
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have matriarchal societies, right?
Well, that's not what I'm
gender roles are
advocating for.
different.
That's gender rules.
Okay.
We do have
Also, I know people that were told that in order to be a man.
What I am not saying that because something has existed for 1,000 years, it is inherently good. What I am saying is that because something existed for 1,000 years, that it serves some level of function. Again, I brought up Durkheim. I brought up functionalism, right, as a sociological lens in which to interpret this. And so when you say we ought to do away with this thing, and then your only piece of evidence is it's arbitrary, well, it's not arbitrary.
I don't know how much anecdotes work here, but like,
yeah.
Huh? What, Xerxes? Well, I was just real quick, evidence-wise, like I don't have a study that shows like if you raise people like in a non-binary way, this is somehow better. I just come from, look, I'm in fucking Berkeley. This is the most like gender-neutral, like fucking liberal, progressive, libtard place you could ever be in, and I've seen lots and lots and lots of people not being forced into these things and operating completely fine. Society's great, unless you want to get into the weeds of like how shitty Berkeley is because libtards. But like it works here. So I think it's better. I think we shouldn't enforce these things. I think we shouldn't shame people for not meeting some arbitrary standard of what is a man. We can shame people for bad behavior. I just don't think it should be gendered.
Yeah, and real quick, like I know people.
I live in Berkeley, and Berkeley's doing great, right? Like, but there's plenty of evidence to suggest that when you have more egalitarian societies, that gender gender disparities increase, right? We see this in nursing, we see this in software engineering, etc. Right? Like when we look at the types of
I think my
work
question
and
will get to
labor.
the heart of
Wait.
the
Let
people
Fabian
engage.
finish. I'm actually very interested.
This again highlights what I see as a conflict, which is another thing that you memed on and didn't address, which is that when you have institutions pushing one concept of gender roles and what we ought to expect, and you have interpersonal situations that are contrary to that creates a situation within young men specifically, because that's what we're talking about here, where there is cognitive dissonance between what society's expectations are from certain institutions and what the individual institutions are. So the only evidence that I can see is that when society tries to do away with gender roles and enforce egalitarianism, that individuals end up choosing more gendered ideas and concepts, and that this conflict is causing a crisis within our culture and in what men believe they ought to do, because they're getting
This is
different
great. This is
different
great. I
messages.
actually agree with.
$10 from Psychonaut. Brook Farm was an experiment for equality among the sexes in 1840, and it failed. Let's give it to Tuna Chip. I see.
Can I go after? Because I have a question.
Yeah, you'll
But
get
we
your
are
turn, man.
running out of time, so we're gonna wrap it up soon.
Man.
Tuna Chip, go.
You're so mad for nothing, bro.
I mean, there are people that wait and there are people that interrupt, and it's a little frustrating. I think that he has a hard job. That's why he's mad. And it's not
Me?
always the same person every single time. I'm saying every time that conflict keeps coming up. It's not a role. It's a dynamic.
Except
Anyway,
for Nonfon, he's the best.
I
Real.
don't. I'll disagree with you on one on the Berkeley. I don't think that Berkeley is an instance, even though people are not enforcing it, and in many instances they're counter enforcing. There's an expectation to buck gender trends in these places. It's not that they're living without the gender trends. It's that they're living inside of the context of knowing what they are, having that framework, and experimenting around with it. Like, you're not gonna if you go to a country that doesn't have a strong sense of how to distribute responsibilities amongst people. It doesn't matter if it's happening on sex. It could happen on class. It could happen on sex. It could happen on race. Different cultures throughout history, different ways. If you have it so that, and this is to Fabian's point, what we're talking about is we're looking at like friction. We're looking at forcing people and trying to incentivize people into going against the things that they're being taught early in life, and just saying, let's change it up. Let's go against. Instead of this like push against the wind, change the thing, just because sometimes you say that you're saying, oh, I just want to free up people to do the things that they want and actualize their potential. But then at the same time, you're saying, well, we're not going to have any conversations about what the maximalization of an individual based on their unique trait is with the language. We have to avoid the language. Instead, like, what are you going to do? How can you have this conversation? How can you not force? Okay, what are you going to do when you have the conversation? Are you going to say, actually, I think that STEM going out of its way to hire women when there are tons of men that want to go further and there are not nearly as many women that want to go further, that maybe the amount of resources we're wasting pushing against the wind would be better just letting people pursue their interest as they find it individually? Why is that bad as opposed to, say, good? Because that looks like what you described to me. To me,
Well, that
getting
first
out
of all,
people's
yeah,
way
you
just
and
letting
Fabian
them
said this. It's
do what
like,
they
should
want
we
is
be
good.
pushing people into a place where they're not naturally falling? But also, I don't know if I necessarily agree that it's like, oh, women were naturally not in STEM, and then we had to push them. I mean, in the 1970s, there were women in STEM, in computer science, than there were men, and then the PCs were marketed to men, and then it kind of fluctuated the other way, and now there's some force that's doing this. I don't even necessarily agree that we should force women into STEM. Like,
I'm
that's
not talking
an
about
opt.
genetics when I say natural. I'm saying that they, as an individual, before we put our finger on the scale as an institution, let's say that you are a college, you are trying to decide how you're going to just do one policy or another. If you keep finding that as you enact this policy this way, that it is netting loss, it's inefficient, it's not doing what the people want to do something else, at what point is that no longer like, oh, good because it's progressive, and it's bad because it's actually like stopping people from going in the direction they want?
I see what you're saying. That's a really good question, and a very, very complicated, because you could make this for a lot of things about like historical injustices. Like, hey, when do we stop affirmative action? When do we stop promoting female only scholarships? Like, I don't know when suddenly
Immediately.
everything's equal. Yeah. I don't know when suddenly everything's equal, but it's like it hasn't been for a very long time, and it's hard to say like, well, all right, like we're not going to treat you differently as much now. Oh, actually we do, but like we're not going to put laws on the books that do it. But, fuck it. Everyone's at the starting line, even though these people have been like, inheriting generational wealth for years and years and years, and they're way, way ahead of you. Get fucked, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know what the exact line is, but that's a very good question. I'm not going to pretend like that has an easy answer, though.
Also, do we think there's evidence of that with STEM?
How far the thing goes.
Nonfon wanted to
What
talk.
I'm explaining,
Wait.
Hold on, Nonfon wants to talk, and Nonfon hasn't talked. So go ahead,
Crazy. I was
Nonfon.
just curious, Tuna, do we think there's evidence of that with women in STEM? My understanding is that their test scores in a lot of STEM subjects are like better than men. They seem to be doing better
I'm
than
not talking
men.
about performance. I'm not saying that women are worse. I'm saying
desire. Like
Yeah, desire.
the
I'm
biggest
talking
gender
about, like,
difference between men and women is that women prefer to deal with people more than to deal with things, right?
I don't
And
think anyone
men
can test
prefer
that.
to deal with
I can
things.
test that.
Oh, you do?
I mean, I think
you
women
guys-
are
okay,
It's
often...
like
You won't
established
disagree with
social
Fabian.
science. Like,
Well,
You
yeah,
will
but
not
the
disagree
asked
with
question is
Fabian.
why.
I'm
I
not even
understand,
talking
and that
about
is
odds.
empirically true. You're right, Fabian. It is true that if you surveyed them, that is true. But the question is why? Why did it come here? So now you're the guy
Right,
who's
but
like,
what I'm
hey,
saying
this
is
fence is here, and I'm
when
saying, why
you
is the fence
have-
here?
No, what I'm saying is that when you have societies and cultures that try and be more egalitarian and be more gender neutral, what you find, right, in like the Nordic countries, you find a larger gender disparity in that, not less. And you have societies where they enforce gender roles a lot, you find the exact opposite. So Rwanda,
but I'm
for
not saying that's
example,
bad,
has
right?
some of the highest rates of women in STEM because of the exact. Right, but what I'm saying is that when you have cultural institutions and individuals that are arguing that we ought do away with gender roles, and that becomes a part of the culture, and then you have that pushed in media, and you have that pushed in academia, and you have government programs that try and stop these disparities, etc. You spend time and resources and institutional human capital so that you can try and undo gender disparities, and so that you can try and undo the concept of gender roles. What you find is a cultural backlash against that, where the gender roles reassert themselves,
but this is
and then
the
you have a
issue.
But I'm not
conflict
arguing for
between
that.
these
I'm
two
just
things.
saying on a personal level. If you want to talk about what should we do as a society, yeah, maybe that is a bad thing, and that's a perfectly fine argument. I'm just not talking about, hey, like, let's fucking dump a bunch of money into telling people, not, all right, you're just gone. You don't care. Okay.
No, he's
Yeah,
got
but
wireless. He's
I-
got
I-
wireless.
Wireless, yeah.
He can hear you.
Oh, you can still hear me. Okay.
Yeah, unlike Wick, I have fucking wireless headphones.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, oh, we need to abolish these. We need to push this in society. I'm just saying, hey, don't enforce it the way we've enforcing it. The way this happens, for the most part, yeah, it's in movies, yeah, it's in institutions, yeah, it's in colleges, yeah, it's in all this, but it's also from you and your kids and who you talk to in your community. And I'm just saying you don't need to gender that, and you don't need to gatekeep gender. Like, it's
Okay.
stupid.
Okay. It's like 8. It's 8, guys. I promised you guys 2 hours. I know we could go on for hours and hours and hours and hours. There's a lot to talk that we didn't get to talk about. There's a lot of things that we got stuck on. I get it, right? I get it. We will have this conversation again. I am certain. But for now, we must be done. So, gang, if you for whatever reason, if you've enjoyed this content, and I'm not sure why you would, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Yeah, okay. Yeah. We got some great content coming up next week. The same time, bad time, same bad channel. Thursday, the 16th, we're gonna have Not So Erudite on. We're gonna have Sad Kit Kat on. We're gonna have Kerbafine, I don't know how to say her name, and one more lovely lady on to discuss this same topic, basically what it means to be a woman in modern society. What's it like being a woman online, right? What unique struggles that they face, and I pray to God it goes better than this one did. I'm going to make sacrifices to the dark gods tonight so that this goes better then. But no, I hope you guys enjoy it. We're also going to be talking about we're going to have a debate on whether or not socialized healthcare should provide sex workers to men who struggle. And we're also going to have a debate on the recent changes in Facebook on their moderation team, which I find the most exciting of all the things we're going to do and we're going to talk about. And so we're going to have a discussion on that. They are moving away from a fact check system to a more community notes-based system. What does that mean, right? Is that better? Is that worse? We're going to talk about it. It's going to be great. We're going to all all these lovely individuals are going to give their closing statements. All the links to these lovely individuals are in the YouTube description. You can click on their link and follow them if you like. And please do so. They have taken time out of their day to come. I will only say this in closing, and then they can have their closings. We as a society do not enforce gender roles, especially what it means to be a man, as we used to. There are positives to this, but there are also negatives. One of the negatives is that it seems to be that men want this. Men want to be more manly. Men want to be more of a man. And the only people who are giving them any answers on how to be a man and not just a good person are people like Andrew Tate. And that needs to change because we cannot have them monopolize this field. We have to have an answer, not how to be a good person. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear, how do I be a better man? And we have to give the people what they want and what the market demands. So please do that. We're going to start with Xerxes. We're going to end with SoyPill. That's the order we're going to go in. Xerxes, go ahead.
I mean, I think there's a lot to be said, but I'll keep it brief. I think one of the most important things about being a man is maintaining many different important virtues, such as patience and temperance, such as maintaining honor, such as if you give your word, you're trustworthy, you adhere to the things you believe, you have that personal integrity. Those are just as the basis. To give credit to Soy, I imagine you could say the exact same thing to a young lady. But I think as a male, there are important aspects, and that physicality and your ability to express yourself with your physicality is also very important, and why your virtue needs to be attached to that, or at least part of it needs to be attached to that, such as you have the power to fight and break someone's neck, but you also have the power to be a construction worker and to build things for people. I do think that the aspect of being male is important to the code of conduct. And perhaps maybe the issue is that we use the term real man as the title of code of conduct, but I do believe a code of conduct should exist. And so I think that's where I would disagree with Soy, but I do understand his greater points, because I do see a lot of manipulation being used when people are addressing males by removing their man card and besmirching them or putting them down. So I think that there does need to be a code of conduct, and to start with, maintaining personal integrity as treating people well, being kind to them, having temperance and peace are important ways to start, and then from there we could go deeper. But those are my thoughts.
Thank you for being here. Check them out, gang. Links in the description. ToonKritic, go ahead.
Yeah, being a man is about being the executive animal, is about being the sort of precursor to the future, builder of the future, experimenter of the future. Being a man is about taking advantage of the unique opportunities you have based on what you are not on all levels, whether or not it is female, a child, animal, and trying to actualize your potential and mediate that different, like the simultaneous fact that you are an individual with a life, but that you also exist inside of a context and are taken as an other by others. And it's constantly changing, and it's good, and it is not something that can be defined in a single moment, but it's forever. But it is constantly important to know and feel out individually what it is in the moment. Right now, it's going to be different for everybody, relatively speaking. But I do think that, as said, strength, intellect, adaptability, reliability, all these things that are often considered virtues, they come in and out of importance, and it's more important than anything to be the person, the executive, who looks at the moment and recognizes which things need to be actualized, which things need to be reined in. It's my summary.
Thank you for being here. And I'll read the super chats at the end, don't worry. And thank you for the membership, Kay. Really appreciate you. But thanks. Check them out, gang. ToonKritic, links in description. Nonfon. Hi.
Yeah, I think it's I do think that it's beneficial for society to enforce some standards or have some some expectations for men that are different than expectations for women. But overall, I do think it's unfair and probably not good to have like some rigid definition of what it means to be a man or a real man. So I would agree with Soy there. If you want to see what else I have to say, you can go to my YouTube channel, Nonfon, or I stream on Twitch, Nonfon420. Usually I'm more econ focused than culture war stuff. So
Fair enough. No, gang, check him out. I like Nonfon. He's a good guy. We're gonna help him grow up right. Okay, he's young. We're gonna help raise him right, and we're gonna teach him what it is to be a real man, and that is important. And I think you should learn how to. I'm not saying that you're not. Right? I'm just saying that I could be more of a man. Right? Everyone could improve. So thank you, Nonfon. Give him a follow. Fabian, please.
Yeah, so, just summarizing kind of what I was hoping people would be able to talk about to a certain degree. I do think that there is a struggle to understand what you ought to do as a man in society, especially in kind of the Western context in these last few years. And there's a number of factors from, the labor market, from social media, from, academia and cultural institutions. And again, I brought up that conflict between, the swing back of pushed egalitarianism or kind of enforced egalitarianism and like the pendulum swinging to the other side and this conflict between that. But overall, even setting those things aside in the general context, I've developed a sociological theory that I've usually called cultural cost theory, which is a blend of structural functionalism, open systems theory, and some elements of all, I took to heart C. Wright Mills, right? The sociological lens. But I think, it's important to recognize that when we engage with a new culture, with a new group of people, with society, etc., that we as humans have different values and we have different skill sets, and our values are subjective, and so they're ordered differently. And when you choose to be an outlier, when you choose to set yourself out, it is in order for a system, a society, a business, whatever, to be functional and to be able to, resist change and maintain structure, it has to gatekeep that which is different. It is necessary for a system to remain stable, to not change to every influence that could potentially change the system. And a system that is overly, gatekeeping, overly, rigid to its tradition, is incapable of changing as the material, technological, cultural things change. And so every system, every institution has to find this balance, this cultural cost. So when you as a man choose to eschew what is traditional, when you as a man choose to eschew what is being done outside of what everyone expects of you, you should expect pushback on that. You should expect derision, and you should look at that and say, do I value what I'm doing to such a degree that it's worth that and worth it to prove that? And so I think that's really what it means to be a man, is to recognize the ways in which you're different and you challenge everyone else. That comes with a cost, and that cost should be there. And if you are successful in proving that your difference is superior, that you ought then fight for those changes within that system. And that is kind of the interplay between culture, gender roles, and individuals and how they engage with institutions. So challenge the system, be different, but recognize that difference comes with pushback, and that's a necessary condition for the survival of our species, is that pushback to you being different. And don't hate that, but examine, is it worth it? Should you conform to a certain degree because what you're doing is stupid, or should you fight for it because you know that there's value in it, and then work within those systems? That's what I would say men ought to do.
Thank you for being here, Fabian. Check him out, gang. Links in the description. Click that link, and if you want to find him, you can find him. I'll read this super chat now because it's addressed at you, Fabian. You probably have to go. $10 from Psychonaut. Fabian, you got to be able to make your points more precise and palatable to the layman, because you make great points, but they are overly bloated. Thank you for $10. Last but certainly not least.
Twitch poll needs nerds too.
Not Nonfon. Fuck. SoyPill. Please.
Yeah, Cersei, I was pleasantly surprised with how much we agreed after having watched your videos, so thanks for that. Nonfon, you're a little sniper. You don't shoot much, but when you do, it is spot on. We talked a lot. We talked past each other a lot. Ultimately, my point is being a man is an arbitrary definition, and trying to put a rigid definition on this is harmful to people. We shouldn't gatekeep gender. We shouldn't let people attach their self-worth to this nebulous concept of gender. We should treat everyone the same, not necessarily within the context of society. Yeah, we should acknowledge gender is a social construct, but it's real. It exists. We have to operate with that gender social construct moving forward. But we can do better. We can tell people to be good without gatekeeping. But if you have to operate within your gender roles, let it be known, I'm the SoyPill. I am the largest man on this panel. I could bench every other man. I'm the manliest man, so I am objectively the winner under your framework. Thank you all. Check out my YouTube.
Check him out, gang. Links in the description, please. Gang, again, like and subscribe if you want. We're not going to end the show after this. I am going to talk a little bit about the fires, but to these lovely individuals, we wave bye-bye. Bye-bye, lovely individuals.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye. If you want to chat with me live, sub here or go to Nonfon420 on Twitch or Kick via the links below. Once again, please like and sub to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support me, and I'll make sure to reply to any question you ask. See you guys next time.